In the age of demons, strength was absolute justice. A world where they fought an endless bloody war. Until 520 years ago, one rose above the rest. The strongest demon king in history named Hiram. 20 years after his conquest, he stood defiant, facing the one being he could not conquer, the demon god. He refused to bow to a higher power, questioning why he should ever obey a divine oracle, a command that demanded a terrible price, the daily sacrifice of 100 of his own people. His grip tightens, cracking the very stone beneath him. He declares that this world and his people belong to him alone, telling the god to stay in its own realm, a response that earns him nothing but divine fury. The demon god's pressure descends, an overwhelming force demanding his death. But Hiram's defiance forces the god to manifest a physical form. It scoffs at the mortal who dares to challenge it, a demon who would stand against a divine being. And Hiram just smiles, ready for the fight of his life. And so began the legendary battle between the demon king and the demon god. The very ground shatters under the god's might. Mountains are torn asunder by divine power, and entire landscapes are swallowed by its wrath. The demon god's authority clashes with the demon king's magic. Yet Hiram stands firm in the heart of the storm, unleashing a torrent of his own immense power, a move that even seems to startle the divine being. He fires back with everything he has. But the god only roars, a monstrous display of fury, forcing Hiram onto the defensive, erecting a massive barrier. The god's monstrous form slams into his defense, a barrier that begins to crack under the pressure and shatters completely before the divine onslaught. But Hiram is already preparing his counterattack. For 3 days and 3 nights, their battle scars the land, until at last the god's physical vessel lies broken. Hiram explains that by descending to the mortal plane, the god made itself vulnerable, a rookie mistake, really. The divine being can only curse his name in disbelief, insisting that a demon could never truly defeat its own god. But Hiram just scoffs, asking who's really the one on the ground. The god insists that his very existence is his true defeat, a statement that only seems to confuse the demon king. With its last breath, the god utters a final, hateful curse. Suddenly, a strange cracking sound fills the air. Hiram's body seizes up in agony. He looks down at his hands in disbelief. As they begin to crumble into nothing, he demands to know what the god has done. The divine being reveals its true form, explaining this is divine punishment. The god clarifies this isn't some mere figure of speech. It has absolute authority over the life and death of all demons. It looms over the crumbling demon king, a being of pure light. But even as his body turns to dust, Hiram can only curse his fate, as he completely disintegrates into the wind, leaving nothing behind but his tattered cloak. The demon god looks down upon the remains, its divine judgment now complete, and with its task finished, it departs from the mortal realm. The world is left scarred and silent, but a single streak of light cuts through the sky, as something falls from the heavens, crashing down onto the broken earth. An ornate door appears, opening to the mortal realm. And from it emerges a small, determined child. He runs across the desolate wasteland, a lone figure of hope. Clutching a small, circular object in his hand, he approaches a massive, fallen creature, a being adorned with the skulls of the vanquished. He buries his face in the tattered remains of Hiram's cloak. His small hands clutch the fabric, his voice choked with sobs. Tears stream down his face as he cries out the demon king's name. A heart-wrenching wail echoes across the empty battlefield, leaving him utterly alone in a world without its king. A long time passes since the fall of Demon King Hiram. In a remote land within a dark and silent chamber, a strange 12-sided stone begins to glow with an inner light. Its faces separate, unleashing a torrent of energy. A magic circle forms, and from its center, a new life is born. A tiny face looks up, letting out its first cry. But this is no ordinary infant, as he declares his name is Hiram. It seems the Demon King had a contingency plan all along. He knew his soul would carry over, but his body would be brand new. His magic circuits, however, were still intact. But if his new body and old soul didn't sync up, he'd simply starve. So he cast a spell to accelerate his own growth, a process that comes with excruciating, unimaginable pain. It felt as if every bone in his body was being shattered and reformed. Reincarnation, as it turns out, is not for the faint of heart. And just like that, the agonizing process is complete. He stands in the very chamber he built for his own reincarnation. He finds the clothes he left behind, enchanted with powerful magic to protect this sacred place. He wonders just how many years have passed since his demise. He had planned for 10, but reincarnation is a tricky business. He approaches the exit, noting the seal has already been broken. His hand touches the ancient door, sensing the passage of time. and a sudden horrifying realization dawns on him. It hasn't been 10 years, it's been 500. He realizes the god's curse was to kill all demons without question. Knowing this, he altered his reincarnation spell at the last second. He chose to be reborn as a human, the weakest of all races, a species with no divine blessing to grant them power or long life. But humans also have the highest potential for growth, a combination that would make him overwhelmingly strong. It was a gamble, but one that seems to have succeeded. He marvels at his new human body. A wicked grin spreads across his face, still getting used to it. Now he's eager to test just how strong he's become. He clenches his fist, knowing that even after 500 years, his one true purpose remains the same: to kill the demon god. He reaches for the door to the outside world, but as his hand makes contact, the seal shatters from the other side. He looks up, completely caught off guard. A figure with long, flowing hair stands in the doorway, revealing a young woman standing amidst a lush forest. She's an elf, and she looks just as surprised to see him. She demands to know what he's doing in a place like this. She warns him that a dangerous dragon sleeps on this mountain. Hiram simply asks who she is, introducing himself in return. The elf smiles, calling herself Lumiel, a dragon slayer. He suddenly grabs her wrist, stopping her in her tracks. She looks back, confused by his sudden action. But after a moment's thought, she seems to understand. Addressing him by name, she accepts his presence here. She offers to escort him to safety before she fights the dragon. Hiram assures her that he can manage on his own. With that, she runs off, telling him to wait right there. He watches her go, calling her a noisy girl, but her words spark a wicked idea in his mind. He looks up, sensing an immense power from the mountain. Without a second thought, he begins to walk, his steps firm and full of purpose. He can feel it now, the overwhelming magic of an ancient dragon. He picks up his pace, eager for the confrontation. A wide, predatory grin spreads across his face. This is perfect. He knows his new body isn't yet accustomed to his magic, and a good fight is the best way to break it in. He finds the beast's lair, a cavern filled with bones, and with a grin, he challenges the ancient dragon to a fight. The massive creature awakens, letting out a furious roar. Its ancient eye locks onto the foolish human below. It gathers a ball of destructive energy in its maw, unleashing a torrent of pure power right at Hiram. The blast catches him off guard, forcing him back. But he raises a single hand, stopping the attack in its tracks. The dragon can only stare in utter disbelief. Hiram just smirks, impressed by the warm-up. The cavern walls explode outwards from the sheer force, but the dragon is far from finished. As Hiram leaps onto its massive tail, it unleashes another torrent of flame, but he's already on the move. The entire lair begins to crumble around them. Hiram compliments the ancient beast on its impressive power. He scales its massive body with surprising ease, as the dragon thrashes wildly to throw him off. But our boy finds his footing on its scaly hide. A wicked grin spreads across his face as he prepares his own spell. The dragon's eye narrows with pure, unadulterated rage. It slams its massive claws into the ground, but Hiram's confident grin never falters. He dashes forward, closing the distance in an instant. The beast lunges, its jaws wide enough to swallow him whole, but our boy just weaves through the attack like it's a dance, dodging a tail swipe that pulverizes the very earth beneath him. The dragon overextends, crashing hard into the cavern wall. It lets out a pained groan, its eye wide with shock. Hiram realizes his body enhancement magic is far more potent than before. He stands his ground as the cavern collapses around them, convinced that being reborn as a human was the right choice. The dragon thrashes wildly, a blur of rage and motion, its eyes burning with the fury of an ancient power. But Hiram remains completely unfazed by the display. He lands right before its snapping monstrous jaws. He raises a hand, a magic circle glowing with power, and with a single gesture, slams the dragon into the ground. The ancient creature can only groan under the immense pressure. Its eye widens in absolute shock and disbelief. The dragon's eye reflects its utter defeat. It admits that it has lost, telling Hiram to do as he wishes. Hiram is genuinely surprised that the beast can speak. The creature clarifies that it is an ancient dragon. It remarks on Hiram's youth, but our boy claims to be 600 years old. The dragon offers up its treasure, but Hiram has no interest in gold. It then offers its own body, telling him to take what he wants after it's dead. But Hiram is simply impressed by its brave and defiant spirit. He asks the ancient dragon to tell him its name, a request that leaves the beast completely baffled. The beast introduces itself as Yoram, the scorching flame dragon. Hiram is impressed that a 600-year-old has two names. Yoram's eye narrows, processing the human's strange words. It shifts its massive body, remarking that Hiram knows a lot for a mere human. A sly grin plays on Hiram's face. The dragon then asks for his name in return. And our boy proudly introduces himself as Hiram. Yoram's eyes widen in disbelief, recognizing the legendary name. Hiram confirms it, he is indeed that Hiram. Yoram pieces it together, realizing Hiram must have activated his spell right before his death in that legendary battle. It explains that its own father told it to live here. Hiram asks when, confused by this strange connection. Yoram says it was 500 years ago, and asks if he remembers Jormungandr, a name that Hiram recognizes instantly. The dragon grins, revealing Jormungandr is its father. A flashback shows the great Dragon King, a beast Hiram defeated in his past life. He was one of Hiram's most powerful and wisest allies, and it seems he left his own son to guard the Demon King's tomb. Hiram recalls a crucial piece of advice, a warning given by the Dragon King himself. Jormungandr had told him that if he fell to the demon god, reincarnating as a human would be far too risky. But that advice is exactly why he altered the spell at the last second. Hiram is still confused by the legend of the god-slaying Demon King. Yoram clarifies that yes, Hiram did die first, but the divine punishment the god used had a massive recoil. The god's own spiritual body was pushed to the brink of annihilation, a revelation that has Hiram demanding to hear every last detail. Yoram explains the god's attack was a conceptual one, a power that couldn't be used on humans who lack a divine connection. Hiram demands to know what happened to the god after their battle. The dragon reveals the god was too wounded to return to its realm, and is now hiding somewhere in a cocoon of its own making. Hiram thanks him for the very useful information. The ancient dragon seems pleased to help, but as Hiram processes this, his expression shifts. Yoram asks what he's doing, breaking the silence. He muses that it's a shame the great Hiram was defeated, asking what his final opponent was like. Hiram admits that the god was indeed powerful, and that's no lie. Yoram simply asks him to tell its father that it fought bravely, but Hiram clarifies that he's not after the dragon's body. Instead, he offers Yoram a new purpose, to serve him. He asks the dragon to aid him in his grand ambition, a request that leaves Yoram utterly confused. Hiram declares that he will kill the demon god and then conquer the world once more. The ancient dragon can only ask if he's truly serious. Our boy just grins, assuring him that he doesn't make such jokes. And with that, Yoram pledges its life and pride to serve King Hiram. Yoram's massive form begins to glow with an ethereal light. A brilliant flash envelops the ancient dragon, as its body rapidly shrinks down, reforming into a much, much smaller creature. Hiram smirks, impressed by his new, conveniently sized ally. The tiny dragon asks for its first command as Hiram's servant, but Hiram admits he has nothing for it yet, until Yoram offers up all the treasure in its lair. Hiram seems surprised, knowing how much dragons value their hoards, but Yoram insists the gold is his, a gift from its father. Hiram looks out upon a literal mountain of treasure. He asks if Yoram collected all of this himself. The little dragon proudly shows off a particularly cool-looking scepter. Hiram just smirks, noting the dragon's unique taste in decor. He asks if Jormungandr left anything else behind. Yoram explains his father left the treasure for him to guard, and Hiram wonders what his old friend is up to now. Suddenly, Yoram presents him with a special item, a beautiful pendant with a glowing pearl. Hiram demands a closer look, his voice filled with urgency. The little dragon happily offers up the item. Yoram explains it was a protective charm for Hiram's adopted daughter, Filfi, a magical tool he carried in his past life, designed to always find her. He recalls the young demon girl, whose immense power and long life meant she could still be alive, a fact the pendant now confirms. He asks Yoram if his father left any other clues about her whereabouts, but it seems Jormungandr kept that information to himself. The little dragon looks on, concerned for its new master. Hiram brings the pendant to his lips, a silent promise. He's not sad, he explains, just relieved to know she's out there. He declares he'll find Filfi and destroy the demon god at the same time, a plan that Yoram enthusiastically supports. Hiram tells his new ally that he's counting on him. Among the treasure, they find a magical pouch with infinite storage. So he packs up the entire hoard, because a king's gotta have his funds. With their business concluded, the pair finally leave the lair. They head for the exit Hiram so conveniently made during their fight. A gaping hole in the cavern ceiling leads to the world above. He steps out onto the mountain peak, taking his first breath of fresh air in 5 centuries. The world has changed, but his ambition remains as vast as the horizon. With his new ally at his side, Hiram is ready to begin his journey. But as they descend the mountain, they spot a commotion nearby. A massive ogre swings its club with brutal force, its snarling face a mask of pure, unthinking rage. and its target is none other than the elf, Lumiel. Her blade shatters against the monster's tough hide, leaving her completely defenseless before the towering beast, a sight that does not escape Hiram's notice. As they walk, Yoram points the way to the nearest human town, explaining that after Hiram's death, the lands fell into civil war. Hiram calls out to Yoram, his expression suddenly serious. The little dragon identifies the creature as a type of orc. Hiram notes that it's an orc lord, though a bit on the small side. Yoram wonders why it's blocking the road, suggesting they take a detour. But before they can act, a familiar figure dashes past them. Hiram can only watch, caught off guard by her arrival. It's Lumiel, who announces her full name with pride. She declares that it is her duty to take the monster's life. The elf stands defiantly before the towering, snarling beast. Yoram asks if he knows her, but Hiram just smiles knowingly. Hiram recalls her earlier claim to be a dragon slayer. But right now, she struggles against the orc lord's might. The beast roars, driven by pure, mindless rage. Yoram notes that for a novice, she's actually quite skilled. Hiram identifies her as an elven hero, though still inexperienced. He considers that as a hero, she is a future enemy, and that it might be best to eliminate her now. The Orc Lord, however, has more immediate plans for her. Hiram continues to watch the battle with a critical eye. Her prized blades shatter, a poor time to learn about warranties. Despite her skill with magic, she charges with a broken sword, an attack that the Orc Lord stops with a single massive hand. Hiram confirms that Yoram was right. She is indeed a hero. Heroes can't use normal magic, but possess a unique power of their own, a power that Lumiel clearly doesn't know how to use yet. And so Hiram decides it's time to save this hero in training. He appears in a flash, stopping the monster's club with one hand. A casual smirk plays on his face, completely unimpressed. He effortlessly tosses the massive beast into the air. His hand glows with a dark, crackling energy, and with a single touch, the Orc Lord dissolves into dust. He remarks that a sword is a blunt instrument without magic. Lumiel can only stare, completely stunned by his power. She thanks him, a grateful smile on her face. He brushes it off, noting she's quite strong for her kind. She declares that she will never forget this life debt. So Hiram makes a simple request in return: information about the world. As they walk, she happily agrees to teach him everything she knows. But their journey is being watched by a horde of orcs, who seem to wonder if they've somehow offended the elf. Lumiel explains she was sidetracked by a rescue request from merchants. The Orc Lord blocked the road and she's worried for their safety. Hiram tells her to go protect them, offering her a new sword. She can only stare in disbelief at his sudden generosity. He tells her not to worry, reminding her that he's strong enough. With a grateful bow, she accepts his help and the weapon, and with her new sword in hand, she dashes off to find the merchants. Yoram questions giving away the treasure, but Hiram doesn't mind. After all, he now has to deal with the rest of the orc horde. He calmly begins to count the enemies arrayed before him. He raises a hand, gathering a small spark of magic. The energy condenses into a single glowing orb. He prepares a simple spell, a basic magic bullet. The orcs can only laugh at such a novice-level attack. They charge forward, a wave of mindless fury. But Hiram just smirks, completely unfazed by the horde. That single orb of light suddenly multiplies, creating 104 shots because overkill is underrated. The first beast is struck down by a torrent of light, and the entire army is wiped out in a single blinding flash. Yoram can only stare, completely speechless. But Hiram just grins, enjoying the raw power at his command. The entire battlefield is left scorched and silent. His ally is stunned, but Hiram calls it a simple beginner's spell. With the orcs gone, he decides to catch up with Lumiel. Elsewhere, the elf is putting her new sword to the test. She stands guard, protecting the merchant she was sent to rescue, but she's completely surrounded by the rest of the horde. She lets out a fierce battle cry, ready for the fight, and with a powerful swing, she cuts down the first beast. She carves a path through the horde, a whirlwind of steel and fury, as she defends the helpless merchants. But her focus is broken by a sudden, sharp pain, as an arrow finds its mark in her shoulder. She looks back in shock, wondering what just happened, only to see the very people she was protecting, revealing they were the ones who shot her. They surround the wounded elf, kicking her sword away, leaving her to face the consequences of their betrayal. Lumiel lies defeated, asking why they betrayed her. The lead merchant just scoffs at her question. He grabs her face, explaining it was for money and his own amusement. He relishes the moment a hero's hope finally breaks, taunting her with the bitter irony of her situation. Apparently, damsel in distress was just a cover for bandit. But a calm voice suddenly orders them to stop. The merchants look up, completely startled by the interruption. They demand to know who dares to interfere, and see Hiram standing there, with Yoram at his feet. Hiram just smiles, claiming to be an ordinary person passing by. He stands calmly in the moonlit forest, facing the thugs. The leader just sees another product to sell, ordering his men to capture him. His lackeys eagerly agree, praising their boss's brilliant idea. But the bandit's smug expression quickly fades, as Hiram appears before him in a flash, delivering a single decisive blow. The others can only stare as their leader is sent flying. Their shock quickly turns to rage as they draw their blades. The remaining thugs charge forward, a truly terrible life decision. But Hiram just watches them approach, his expression unchanged. With the bandits dealt with, the forest falls silent once more. He turns his attention to the wounded elf on the ground. He kneels down, asking if she's all right. Lumiel looks up, recognizing her savior. Hiram just smiles, telling her not to worry. She can only offer a tearful, heartfelt thank you. He gently places a hand on her head and begins to cast a simple healing spell. A warm light envelops her as her wounds begin to close. She looks up in relief, the pain finally gone. He realizes his healing spell was a bit too potent, knocking her out cold. He decides to clean up the scene before they head to the nearest town. The bandit leader desperately questions why he'd help an elf over his own kind. Hiram just smirks, reminding the man who sold out his allies for profit. But then something in the bandit's pack catches his eye. He pulls out a strange jar, identifying it as a tool to summon orcs. He also notes the bandit leader carried a monster-repelling charm. He quickly pieces together their plan: lure the orcs, but protect themselves. He realizes the entire orc attack was an elaborate trap from the start. Orchestrated by a powerful mage who wants Lumiel dead, the bandit leader snarls, refusing to cooperate. But Hiram's interrogation methods are persuasive. He calmly asks who hired him to set this trap, a trap that used this very jar to summon the orcs. The bandit lets out a scream of pure agony. He tries to play dumb, but the pressure on his hand says otherwise. Hiram is not impressed by his attempts to feign ignorance. He repeats the question, knowing a powerful mage is pulling the strings. The bandit finally breaks, screaming that he truly doesn't know. Hiram realizes the man is telling the truth. He's just a pawn. Yoram asks if the bandit is truly ignorant of his employer. Hiram considers this, deciding there's no point in further questions. He then turns his attention back to the unconscious elf on the ground. He lifts Lumiel into his arms as Yoram asks if they're just leaving the bandits. Hiram simply holds up the monster-repelling charm he took from the leader. Yoram correctly identifies the magical ward. Hiram explains he's leaving the summoning jar right next to the bandit, leaving the man's survival entirely up to chance. The bandit's face contorts in terror as a shadow falls over him. The very monsters he summoned now loom over him, ready to collect their due. As a new day dawns, the forest settles into a quiet peace. Hiram walks on, carrying the still unconscious Lumiel. He looks down at the sleeping elf in his arms, who rests peacefully, safe for the first time all night. Sometime later, she awakens with a start, calling his name. She insists she's well enough to walk on her own now. With a grateful smile, she thanks him for the sword and his jacket. But Hiram tells her not to worry, offering them as a gift. Lumiel immediately protests, saying she can't possibly accept. He just smirks, telling her she can return them in town. She asks what happened to the merchants she was trying to save. Hiram calmly explains they were never merchants, but bandits. He casually mentions he left them for the orcs to deal with, a revelation that leaves the young hero completely speechless. Yoram notes that heroes are far too soft-hearted for their own good. Lumiel admits she still has her original mission to slay the ancient dragon. Hiram recalls her earlier boast, doubting she could ever defeat such a beast. He tells her not to worry, as he already talked the dragon into leaving, an explanation that only leaves the elf more confused than ever. She insists she needs proof of her completed mission for her superiors. Hiram suggests they just find someone else to confirm her story. He then asks her to fulfill her promise and tell him about this country. She reveals its name is the Ortville Kingdom, a name that startles him. She explains her family name is the same, as she is the first princess. Hiram realizes the bandits knew exactly who they were targeting. He asks her to tell him everything she knows about this new kingdom. She explains it was founded a century ago, unifying the continent under elven rule, a world where elves are at the top and humans are at the very bottom. She admits that elves look down on humans, which is why she was targeted, a fact that our newly human demon king finds deeply ironic. Lumiel asks if he will ever forgive her for her people's actions. Hiram turns the question back on her, asking if she shares their prejudice. She quickly denies it, her voice filled with conviction. He notes that she seems to have a lot of confidence, but she admits it's her duty to stop the oppression, a duty she has failed. Hiram observes that at least she's trying to make a difference. Lumiel can only admit that she is powerless to change things. He smiles, telling her that's no reason for him to hate her. After all, there are good and bad people among both elves and humans. His words leave her completely stunned, looking up at him in awe. She looks up at him, offering a heartfelt thank you. As they continue, she asks about the demon lands to the far east. Hiram realizes that in her earlier explanation of the world, she never once mentioned the demon race. Lumiel confirms that demons are almost never seen in this kingdom. She explains that 200 to 300 years ago, a fierce war raged between the elves and the demons, and after a long and bloody conflict, the elves drove them from the continent. A victory that has since been called the Great Holy War. Hiram processes this new history as her subjects greet their princess. As they approach the city, Lumiel calls out to Hiram. She asks if he has found a place to stay for the night. She offers him a room at her home, promising a warm bed and a hot meal. Hiram smiles, finding the offer far too good to refuse. With their plans settled, he decides it's time for introductions. He calls down his tiny winged companion from the sky. Lumiel is immediately smitten, calling Yoram a baby dragon. She asks if she can pet the cute 600-year-old ancient beast. As they walk through the city gates, she continues to fawn over him. A flag waves proudly over the capital of the Ortville Kingdom. Lumiel tells him they're just a few minutes away from the capital. They approach the massive city gates, flanked by elven guards. The moment they step inside, the citizens erupt in cheers. A crowd gathers, relieved to see their princess has returned safely. She offers them a reassuring smile, apologizing for the worry she caused. But the royal guards seem less than thrilled to see a human at her side. Their silent judgment hangs heavy in the air, a look that does not go unnoticed by our boy. Lumiel proudly announces that Hiram convinced the dragon to leave. The crowd immediately showers him with praise, much to his surprise. 30 minutes later, the streets have finally cleared, and Hiram is just relieved to be free from the adoring crowd. He notes that Lumiel is clearly beloved by her people, but he also notices that no royal guards have come to greet her. She turns back with a bright smile, announcing their arrival, a sight that seems to catch our boy off guard. She leads him toward a rather impressive-looking estate, explaining that this is her personal residence, where a group of maids are waiting to welcome her home. The head maid tells Hiram to make himself at home. Lumiel cheerfully announces that dinner is ready for them. Hiram accepts the invitation as Yoram lets out an excited cry. They're treated to a magnificent feast fit for royalty, and Yoram wastes no time, diving headfirst into the meal. After eating his fill, the little dragon promptly falls asleep. Even in his sleep, he's still a dragon, breathing a tiny flame. With the meal finished, a maid serves them tea. Hiram calmly enjoys his drink, thanking her for the service. Lumiel then asks how a human like him is so skilled with healing magic. He simply chalks it up to a lot of training and combat experience. Lumiel asks how he knew she couldn't use magic. Hiram explains it was strange for an elf not to use it in battle. The mood at the table grows somber as she prepares to explain. She admits she's unable to use magic, a fact that has caused her trouble in the army. Because of this, she's known as the incompetent princess, the shame of her family. Hiram realizes this is why she took on the dragon-slaying mission alone. Suddenly, she stands up from her seat, calling out his name with a new resolve. She asks him to teach her how to use magic, and bows deeply, pleading for his help. Hiram seems surprised, asking why she'd want him to be her teacher. She explains that his healing magic surpassed any elves she'd ever seen. Yoram, however, panics, trying to warn him that she's a hero. Hiram just smiles, petting the passed-out dragon. He finds the entire situation rather amusing. He admits that while he did train hard, that's not the whole story. Lumiel can only look on, confused by his cryptic answer, so he decides to tell her the truth. He is a reincarnated being, and in his past life, he was the legendary demon king Hiram. Lumiel can only apologize, admitting she's never heard of him. Hiram just smiles, explaining it was 500 years ago. He then asks if she's still okay with it, knowing he's a demon king. Lumiel takes a moment, her expression unreadable. She simply repeats his own words back to him, that there are good and bad people in every race. In fact, she's thrilled. She's not seeing a threat, she's seeing a magical cheat code. Hiram seems genuinely surprised by her reaction. She gathers her dress, preparing a formal gesture. And with a deep curtsy, she calls out his name. She asks him once more to please be her teacher. Hiram agrees, a confident smile on his face. Lumiel is overjoyed, thanking him for accepting her as his student. But Hiram notes that a human teaching a princess would draw far too much attention. She pouts for a moment, but agrees to just call him by his name. Hiram's expression turns serious, his mind already on other matters. Later that night, the estate settles into a quiet calm. Lumiel calls to him from outside his room, telling him the bath is ready. He thanks her, unaware of the silent observer just outside his window. A lone crow sits perched on a branch, watching the room intently. Its eye glints with an unnatural, intelligent light. But its watch is cut short as a whip-like attack sends it flying. The crow flies through the night sky, carrying its message. It returns to a dark cavern, where a lone figure awaits its report. The bird drops a small silver disc into its master's hand. A magical tool used for long-distance surveillance. The master is a horned demon who calmly reviews the intel. A faint, cruel smile plays on his lips as he learns the truth. But his calm demeanor shatters into a furious roar. He crushes the silver disc, his rage boiling over. A memory flashes through his mind of a young girl running away, and he screams out a single familiar name, Filfi. A memory of a young demon girl screaming in terror. A flashback to a desperate, chaotic battle. The girl is protected by a massive, skeletal king, a being of immense power, watching over her. In the present, the horned demon's fist clenches tight. His face is a mask of pure, unyielding rage, and he screams her name into the darkness of his lair. At that very moment, Hiram jolts awake, calling out for Filfi. He clutches his head, realizing it was all just a dream. But the weight of the nightmare lingers in the morning light. He wakes to the sight of Lumiel already training in the garden. She swings her sword with a fierce, unwavering determination. Nearby, Yoram wakes up, impressed by the quality of elven beds. Hiram just smirks, admitting they're better than what dragons are used to. Lumiel greets them both with a bright, cheerful smile. At breakfast, Hiram notes that she's quite the early riser. She then asks what he and Yoram have planned for the day. Hiram admits he doesn't really have a schedule, but then offers to finally teach her about magic. Lumiel can barely contain her excitement, asking if he's serious. She thanks him profusely, practically vibrating with excitement. He begins his lesson, explaining that magic is divided into two types. He reveals that she's already using internal magic to enhance her body. Without it, he says, she never could have fought the Orc Lord. Lumiel is stunned, realizing she's been using magic all along. He explains her incompetence is just an inability to project it externally. Her first lesson begins with a simple instruction. Hold out her hands. He tells her to visualize her internal magic flowing down her arms. She closes her eyes, focusing on channeling that power into her palms. He notes she has immense power but poor control, a common issue for heroes who must master the fundamentals. For an entire hour, her hands tremble with the effort. Sweat pours down her face as she struggles to channel her power. Hiram watches her with a calm, analytical gaze. The princess is completely exhausted but refuses to give up. Finally, she collapses, and Hiram calls an end to the lesson. He suggests they do this every day because who needs rest anyway? But Lumiel eagerly agrees, her spirit completely unbroken. With the training session over, Hiram considers their next move. He decides that since they have time, he'll explore the city, a plan that seems to catch both Lumiel and Yoram by surprise. Lumiel excitedly offers to give him a tour of the city. Hiram points out that a princess would be far too conspicuous. She assures him she has the perfect disguise for the occasion. So Hiram and Yoram wait for her in the garden. A moment later, she calls out to them, ready to go. She returns, now sporting fox ears and a fluffy tail. Hiram questions her choice of disguise, pointing out it's rather obvious. The princess seems to realize her plan might have a flaw. She asks him to call her Lumi so no one recognizes her name. With that settled, the trio finally heads out to explore the capital. The city streets are clean and well kept, a picture of prosperity for the ruling elven class. As they walk, Lumiel explains she must keep her identity hidden. Hiram takes in the sights of this new era, remarking that the city is surprisingly beautiful, but Lumiel's expression turns somber, admitting it's not all like this, a statement that leaves Hiram a bit confused. She leads them away from the bustling market, toward a part of the city with a much darker reputation. Here, in the slums, she greets the human children with a warm smile. She hands out food, a familiar and welcome sight to the children. Hiram watches the scene unfold with a quiet, somber expression. The children are overjoyed, pointing at the strange new visitors. He notices one boy's bandaged arm and offers to heal it with magic. A warm light envelops the child's arm as the wound disappears. The other children are amazed, calling him a master healer. The little boy can only stare up at him, completely in awe. But a little girl's attention is drawn to Yoram, calling him cute. Hiram's expression suddenly darkens, a flicker of pain in his eyes. The girl happily holds the tiny dragon, calling out Hiram's name. But her voice seems to trigger a distant, painful memory. He recalls his daughter, Filfi, holding a baby Yoram, a rare moment of peace from his past life as the Demon King. The children are amazed by the flying lizard as Hiram introduces his companion. He kneels among them, a strange sight for a former king. and for a moment, he's surrounded by a warmth he hasn't felt in centuries. Lumiel watches the scene with a gentle smile. She remarks on how surprisingly kind he is to the children, a comment that seems to catch Hiram a little off guard. As the kids continue to play with the tiny ancient dragon, he explains that the children reminded him of someone named Filfi, a young girl he raised in his past life as the Demon King. Lumiel listens, her expression filled with concern for him. He knows she's still alive, but after 5 centuries. He admits he just wants to see her one more time, a sentiment that brings a gentle smile to Lumiel's face. As they continue their walk, a woman thanks Lumiel for her help. She explains her husband has fully recovered from his illness. Another resident tries to get her attention, but she apologizes. But Hiram just smiles, telling her this is a fine tour in itself. Yoram flies over, asking about the princess's actions. He wonders if this hero in training can truly solve their problems, but Hiram knows she can't save everyone on her own. The locals explain that she's the only one who listens to them, so Hiram offers to hear their story as well. They ask him what he thinks of their princess, a girl who listens without prejudice and speaks for the powerless. Hiram then asks about the local lord who ignores his own people. They explain he's a corrupt official who bought his way into power. Just then, Lumiel turns, calling out Hiram's name. The man pleads with Hiram, explaining the princess is in a difficult position. Hiram asks him to elaborate on her precarious situation. He reveals the prime minister's daughter married the king, giving birth to the first prince. And to secure his grandson's claim, he's been slandering the popular princess. He's even replaced her knights with his own men, leaving her completely isolated. With the king now ill, the prime minister's faction has seized control of the court. Hiram realizes that Lumiel has no allies in the palace or among the knights. The man explains that despite it all, she continues to fight for them with a smile. And so he begs Hiram to please look after their princess, a heavy request that leaves the former demon king completely stunned. Hiram just smiles, agreeing to do what he can to help. The man is grateful, knowing the princess has no one else on her side. The very next day, her training resumes with a new intensity, and Hiram is genuinely surprised by the result. A tiny spark of magic finally appears in Lumiel's hand. She pushes herself to the absolute limit, her body trembling with the sheer effort of her focus. Hiram is impressed, noting a hero's potential is truly abnormal. With the session over, a maid brings them all a well-earned drink, and Yoram wastes no time enjoying his. The little dragon happily declares the food is delicious, a fact that leaves Lumiel completely stunned, asking if he can talk. Hiram explains that Yoram is the very ancient dragon she was sent to slay. She can only stare in disbelief, asking if it's really him. Hiram confirms it, telling her to just get along with the beast. And Lumiel, ever the optimist, is more than happy to oblige. Even the grumpy ancient dragon seems to accept her formal greeting. Sometime later, the group prepares to part ways for the day. With Lumiel seen off, Hiram decides it's time for them to explore the city. But he's stopped by a group of elves bowing deeply before him. He asks what's going on, his expression turning serious. He spots a small beastman child cowering on the ground. A human boy stands over him, pleading with the royal guards. But the guard just scoffs, ordering the inferior child to leave, an order that's cut short by a swift kick to the face. Hiram moves in a blur of controlled fury, sending the armored guard flying with a single decisive blow. He turns to the children, asking if they're all right. The young boy can only stare up in awe at his strength. But Hiram just clarifies that the guards were simply too weak. The boy explains that monsters have invaded the slums, trapping everyone inside. Hiram calmly tells the child to lead the way. The boy runs, guiding him through the panicked city streets. In the distance, a massive creature tears through the city. The people of the slums are trapped before a locked gate, screaming for help. But the elven guards on the other side refuse to move. A man desperately pleads with them, begging for the children's safety. But the local lord orders the gate to remain shut, claiming human children are replaceable. The crowd can only stare in horror at his cruel decree. He laughs, declaring that the lives of elves and humans are not the same. He sends the guards flying, calling out the corrupt lord. He tells the man that if he won't protect his people, he should just give up his title and learn from Lumiel. The guards are enraged, ordering their men to attack the inferior human. But he moves like a blur, taking them all down with ease. His expression is cold, his patience clearly at its end. The lord flees, screaming that no one insults the elves. He raises a scepter, gathering a massive amount of energy. A swirling vortex of power forms, a spell meant to kill, and he unleashes it all in a single destructive blast. But Hiram stands his ground as the wave of destruction rushes toward him. He looks on, completely unimpressed by the display. He raises a single hand to meet the attack, and effortlessly catches the spell in his palm. The ground shatters, but the magic is completely nullified. Hiram just smirks, not even a scratch on him. The Lord can only stare in terror as a hand reaches for his face. In an instant, Hiram is behind him, grabbing him by the collar. He lifts the man with ease, calling the attack a decent warm-up. He notes that if the knights had just used magic, they could have beaten the Orc Lord themselves. The Lord screams about his superiority, questioning why he should ever fight for humans. Hiram just looks at him, completely unmoved by the rant. He calls the man pathetic and tosses him over the wall. The Lord plummets towards the very people he abandoned, letting out a terrified scream as he crashes to the ground. He lands right in the middle of the monster-infested slums and comes face to face with the very beast he ignored. Hiram turns to the remaining guards, asking if they'll save their master, but they can only stand there in stunned, cowardly silence. So Hiram just smirks, telling them he'll handle it himself. Just then, Lumiel arrives, declaring she'll join the fight, but the guards just mock her, calling her the incompetent princess. They sneer that she and the human are a perfect match. But their insults don't stop her from stepping forward. As she walks past them all, heading for the gate, Hiram just watches her go with a knowing smile. He then grabs the iron gate with a single hand and rips it clean from its hinges with ease. The people cheer as he asks if anyone is still trapped inside. A young boy confirms they're all safe, thanking the princess. Lumiel tells him to leave the rest to her, a confident smile on her face. He offers her a new sword, which she gratefully accepts. Now armed, she faces the massive beast terrorizing the slums. She takes a determined step forward, her resolve hardening as she prepares for battle. The monster's eyes glow with mindless fury. It slams its fist into the ground, a show of brute force. But Lumiel charges in, undeterred by its immense size. She leaps into the air, ready to strike a decisive blow. The beast swings its massive arm to meet her head-on. Her eyes burn with a fierce determination as she dives in. The beast roars, a mask of pure, unthinking rage. It slams its 6 massive fists into the ground, sending debris flying. Lumiel and her knights are caught in the shockwave, but she pushes through the onslaught, her resolve unbroken. She lands a powerful kick, severing one of its massive arms. But the fight has taken its toll, leaving her exhausted on the ground. She closes her eyes, remembering her teacher's words, recalling his lesson to visualize her magic flowing through her body. And for the first time, a spark of power crackles around her. The monster brings its full weight down upon her, but Lumiel holds her ground, her eyes filled with resolve. Her body strains under the immense pressure of the attack. The very earth shatters from the force of the blow, but she pushes through, her body now glowing with power. She moves in a blur of motion, her sword held high. Her focus is absolute as she prepares to strike. She stands before the beast, ready to end this fight, and with a final determined cry, she unleashes her power. A single decisive slash cuts through the monster's hide. The monster's massive body falls, cut clean in two. She lands, a quiet sense of victory on her face. She opens her eyes, a bright smile spreading across her face. She turns to Hiram, excitedly announcing her success. Hiram notes that she's grown much stronger, despite his limited training. But she gives all the credit to her new teacher. The children of the slums cheer, thanking their princess for saving them. But a shadowy hand suddenly reaches for one of the children. Hiram steps in, warning them that the fight isn't over yet. As a massive, sinister magic circle forms in the sky above, a dark energy crackles from the portal above, casting a massive, ominous shadow over the entire slum. Lumiel asks what's happening, but Hiram's grim expression says it all. From the darkness, a skeletal maw begins to emerge, its massive claws tearing through the barrier between worlds. A monstrous, undead dragon lets out a silent, furious roar. It crashes down into the city, a terrifying new threat for our heroes. Hiram identifies it as a zombie dragon, much to Lumiel's confusion. The beast confirms it, an undead whose soul is bound to its corpse. Hiram asks Yoram if he recognizes the creature, but the little dragon denies it. Hiram asks Lumiel if she's ready for this fight. She takes a deep breath, her resolve hardening. With her sword held steady, she prepares for battle. She declares that she will take on the undead beast. The zombie dragon lets out a furious, silent roar. It towers over the ruined city, a truly massive threat. The children of the slums can only watch in terror. But Hiram tells them all to stay back, keeping them safe. His expression is cold, his focus absolute. He takes a single step forward, ready to face the new threat. Lumiel leaps into action, her blade aimed at the undead beast. She unleashes a powerful slash against its massive form, but the impact sends a shockwave through the battlefield, throwing her back through the air amidst the rubble. She quickly recovers, pushing off the ground to regain her balance. Her eyes burn with an unyielding resolve. But the zombie dragon is already preparing its counterattack, unleashing a torrent of destructive energy from its maw. The blast engulfs the young hero in a blinding flash of light, a massive attack that threatens to incinerate everything in its path. The children can only cry out the princess's name in terror. But through the smoke and fire, Lumiel stands firm, her will completely unbroken by the undead beast's attack. She pushes through the torrent of energy, ready for a counterattack, facing down the monstrous creature with a newfound power. She lands on its back, her blade held high, her eyes burning with the resolve of a true hero. She drives her sword deep into the beast's skull. A brilliant flash of light erupts from the point of impact. Hiram notes that she just cut through a dragon's breath with a sword. But the zombie dragon is completely unfazed by her attack. He notes that a dragon's scales are like paper to a hero, which is exactly why he's never been a fan of heroes. The dragon thrashes wildly, sending her flying once more. The slums crumble under the weight of their battle. The children can only watch in terror, calling out her name, but their cries draw the monster's attention. Lumiel lands on a nearby roof, seeing the new danger. The beast looms over the helpless children, ready to strike. She screams for them to run, her voice filled with panic. But just as the attack is about to hit, the children brace for the inevitable impact. One of them stands firm, trying to shield the others. Suddenly, a massive magic circle appears before them, stopping the dragon's breath in a flash of light. The children look up in awe, completely unharmed. Hiram stands before them, his hand outstretched. He effortlessly contains the torrent of destructive energy. The undead beast's attack is completely nullified, as Hiram binds it in chains of pure magic. The undead beast thrashes wildly against its magical bonds. But Hiram's grip is absolute. He slams the massive creature into the ground with overwhelming force. He lands on its skull, ready to finish this. He calls out to Lumiel, telling her to get ready. She quickly gets to her feet, ready for his command. She leaps straight into the monster's gaping maw. Her expression is one of pure, unyielding focus. Her blade strikes true, hitting its hidden weak point. She pushes forward with all her might, a final, desperate attack. A brilliant flash of light erupts from within the beast, as its undead eyes widen in a final, silent scream. The massive skull is sent flying back from the force of the blow. Lumiel lands on its back, her attack finally complete. She hits the ground, exhausted but victorious. She stands tall, her sword planted firmly in the earth. The princess lets out a ragged, weary breath. She looks back at Hiram, offering a silent word of thanks. The massive undead creature lies defeated before her. She offers the fallen beast a final prayer, hoping it finds peace. Hiram approaches, complimenting her on a splendid display of skill. Lumiel can only offer a quiet, grateful thank you. The children of the slums rush forward, cheering for their princess. They thank Hiram as well, but he tells them to direct their gratitude to Lumiel. The young boy looks up at him with pure admiration. The people check on their princess, relieved that everyone is safe. Lumiel smiles, happy to see her people unharmed, but Hiram's expression remains grim, his mind piecing things together. He realizes this was all another trap meant for Lumiel. Yoram confirms it. The enemy knew she'd rush in alone, leaving her to face the zombie dragon by herself. Hiram calls out to the corrupt lord. He just threw over the wall. The man is on the ground, clutching his head in agony. He writhes in pain, his mind clearly breaking. He screams incoherently, his eyes wide with terror. Hiram notes that his reaction is far too suspicious. A strange, dark tear streams down the Lord's face. But Hiram's gaze remains cold and analytical. The Lord screams that he's been cursed, a spell hidden within him. Yoram wonders why anyone would bother cursing such a pawn. Hiram explains it's the most logical way to silence him. He recognizes the curse as a product of demon magic. He decides there's nothing more to be learned from this pawn. The next morning, a new development arises. Lumiel rushes to him, holding an official-looking letter. She excitedly announces he's been summoned by the king himself, but Hiram is immediately suspicious, wondering about the reason. She explains it's to reward him for his heroic deeds. The news traveled suspiciously fast, thanks to a magical device. He senses there's a deeper motive behind this sudden invitation, so he agrees, but only if Lumiel comes with him. Lumiel is overjoyed, promising to be his personal guide. Hiram just smiles, agreeing to answer the king's summons. She happily runs off to prepare for their visit to the palace. Later, Hiram tells Yoram he fully expects a trap at the royal court. He calmly drops a sugar cube into his tea. As he considers the bandits, the orc lord, and the zombie dragon, he knows they were all part of a larger plot, and he's eager to see the mastermind's next move. With their plans settled, he and Yoram head for the royal palace, a confident grin on his face, ready for whatever the capital throws at him. Meanwhile, in a dark and distant land, A demonic fortress stands under the moonlight. A new demon king demands to hear the report one more time. Her subjects confirm the unbelievable rumor is true. Hiram has been resurrected, but as a human. The new ruler, Ilmgart, considers this strange turn of events. Her advisors scoff, believing his reincarnation must have failed. One insists that even if it is Hiram, he's no longer a threat. But Ilmgart knows better, admitting it's entirely possible. Another suggests they should simply eliminate him just in case. He volunteers for the mission, asking for her permission to act. He explains the Ortville kingdom is his territory and awaits her command. But Ilmgart's expression remains cold and unreadable. She denies his request, refusing to leave this matter to him. The subordinate bows deeply, thanking her for the honor. She instead orders him to kill Hiram and bring her his head. The dark halls of the demon fortress are silent and vast. Ilmgart walks alone, her mind clearly on other matters. She muses on the fact that Hiram has truly been resurrected. She stands on a balcony watching the moonlit sky. But the idea of him being reborn as a human is absurd. She declares that a weak Hiram is not the king she once knew. Her mind drifts back to a time long past, to a battle that shook the very heavens, and to the quiet moments that followed. She remembers sleeping soundly by the fire, only to wake up in the middle of the night. She saw him then, enchanting a small object with his magic. His focus was absolute, his expression surprisingly gentle. He was pouring his power into a familiar-looking pendant. He clenches his fist, as if struggling with the delicate spell. And then he looks up, caught completely off guard. He asks if he woke her, but she's more curious about the light. He explains he was using the pendant to search for Filfi. Ilmgart asks excitedly if he managed to find her, but he admits it's not that simple to track her down. Back in the present, Hiram thanks Lumiel for her help. He tells her they'll reach the capital in the morning. As the camp settles down for the night, Lumiel watches him with a gentle, thoughtful expression. She wishes him a good night as the fire crackles softly. The next morning, they finally arrive at the capital city. Yoram excitedly takes in the sights of the capital. They ride past grand statues and architecture, their carriage making its way through the city streets. The little dragon marvels at this new world. Lumiel then mentions that her sister is in the capital. She asks if Hiram would be willing to meet her. Our boy calmly agrees, seeing no reason to refuse. Lumiel is overjoyed, thanking him for his kindness. Their carriage pulls up to a rather impressive estate, a place that seems more like a palace than a home. He asks if this is her home, but she explains it's a royal villa. He asks why she isn't at the palace, and Lumiel explains her sister is ill. As they enter, Hiram takes note of the staff lining the halls. He notes they all seem highly skilled, asking if they're from the palace. He asks if they're all warriors, but she just smiles, clarifying that's not the case. She leads him to a door, announcing this is her sister Shire's room. Inside, a young elf girl rests in a massive, ornate bed. She sits up, her face lighting up as she calls out to her sister. The two sisters share a warm, heartfelt embrace. The younger sister expresses her relief that Lumiel has returned safely. Shires then asks about the friend her sister brought along. Lumiel happily introduces Hiram and his companion, Yoram. The young princess gets out of bed and offers a formal greeting, thanking him for protecting Lumiel. But her attention is quickly drawn to the tiny dragon. Hiram explains that Yoram is actually an ancient dragon from the old tales. She's not afraid, just curious why such a fearsome beast seems so calm. Yoram, clearly enjoying the attention, offers to let her pet him, an offer the young princess can hardly believe. And so she gently pets the ancient beast, who seems to enjoy the company. The four of them share a peaceful, happy moment together. Shires asks her sister where she met this mysterious human. Lumiel gives a brief, heroic account of their meeting, a story she's clearly very proud to tell. She continues her tale, recounting the battle with the Orc Lord. As the day wears on, the mood in the room begins to shift. The excitement of the day has left the young princess exhausted. Lumiel remarks that it's been a while since she slept so peacefully. Hiram agrees, saying that a good rest is what she needs. But Lumiel reveals the doctors say her illness is incurable. Hiram confirms that Shire's illness is indeed a special case. But he reveals that while he's no doctor, he knows this particular ailment well. Lumiel looks up, her face filled with a sudden, desperate hope. He tells her not to worry, a dark energy crackling around his hand, a power he seems uniquely qualified to handle. Later, he's shown to his room, which he finds quite impressive. A butler arrives, announcing that dinner is now ready. Lumiel is surprised at how quickly the day has passed. They find Yoram has fallen asleep right beside the resting princess. Lumiel wonders about dinner, but Yoram reminds her that dragons don't need to eat. Hiram looks over, a plan already forming in his mind. He tells Yoram that he's counting on him, The little dragon salutes, promising to guard the room. Later that evening, a lavish dinner is served. Hiram and Lumiel dine in the grand hall, surrounded by staff. Lumiel then asks if he'd like to use the bath. He agrees, saying it's a good way to end the day. Fresh towels are prepared for the guest of honor. He waves off the servants, preferring to handle things himself. And for the first time in centuries, he enjoys a moment of peace. He sinks into the water, finally getting a moment alone. But his peace is cut short as he senses a presence nearby. His eyes narrow, realizing he's not the only one in the room. A figure steps into the water, their identity still hidden. He moves in a flash, ready to confront the intruder, and finds himself face to face with a very surprised Lumiel. He can only stare, completely caught off guard by her arrival. The princess is just as stunned, her voice barely a whisper. Our boy quickly averts his gaze, realizing the awkwardness of the situation. He pushes her away because apparently knocking is a lost art. He shoves her back, his patience clearly wearing thin. He asks why she'd just barge in like that, but he quickly realizes she must have a serious reason for such a bold move. Her worried expression confirms his suspicions. She asks him for a favor concerning her sister, Shire's. Hiram's tone turns serious, asking if something is about to happen. She admits she doesn't know for sure, but she's worried. She pleads with him to lend Shire's his strength if the time comes. He calmly agrees, telling her to leave it to him. Lumiel asks if he'll protect her sister, no matter what happens to her. He promises to protect Shire's, even if it costs Lumiel everything. Overcome with relief, she embraces him with a heartfelt thank you. He realizes she has no allies in the palace or among the knights, and that's why she has no one else to turn to but him. With their conversation over, he finally leaves the bath. A butler offers him fresh clothes, but Hiram notes the constant surveillance. The staff's attentiveness only confirms his suspicions. He's then escorted to his room for the night. A place that seems secure, but he knows better. He's left alone to rest, but his mind is far from at ease. He notes that this place feels more like a prison. A gilded cage designed to keep Shire's under strict watch. He lies down, seemingly ready to rest for the night. But a sudden drowsiness tells him the water was drugged. He just smiles, deciding to play along for now. After all, it's the best way to see what his enemies have planned. He falls into a deep, feigned sleep. And just as expected, a visitor arrives in the dead of night. A cloaked assassin, armed and ready to strike. The figure looms over the bed, prepared to end Hiram's life. But our boy is only pretending to be asleep. The assassin raises their blade for the final blow. The sword comes down in a swift, silent arc, only to be stopped just inches from its target. Hiram catches the blade, impressed by their audacity. The assassin can only offer a quiet apology. He sits up, telling them not to worry about it. He pulls back the hood, revealing a tearful Lumiel. He gently takes the weapon from her trembling hands. He asks why she stopped, wondering why she hesitated. She can only offer another quiet apology. Her voice is filled with a quiet desperation. But he already understands the reason for her actions. She explains that this was the only way, a revelation that leaves him completely stunned. She begs him to take care of her sister, a final, desperate plea for Shire's safety, and before he can react, she moves. The sword clatters to the floor. As Lumiel collapses into his arms, he looks down at the defeated princess on the floor. He asks if the Prime Minister was the one behind this. Her reaction tells him he's hit the mark. He pieces it together. They used Shire's as a hostage to force her hand. Lumiel collapses, the weight of the truth crushing her. She explains Shire's will die without a special medicine, one that only the Prime Minister's faction can create. Hiram realizes her plan was to fail the assassination and sacrifice herself. She can only offer a tearful, broken apology. A cold, silent fury builds in Hiram's eyes. But Hiram's expression suddenly shifts to a confident smile. He calmly tells her not to worry, assuring her that Shire's illness is no longer a problem. Lumiel can only look up, completely confused by his words. He explains her sister's illness is actually a malicious curse, one that he already dispelled when he first visited her room. He reminds her of just how powerful his healing magic is, and asks if she can't bring herself to trust him. The weight of his words leaves her completely stunned. But through her tears, she declares that she wants to believe in him. He smiles, telling her to leave everything to him. Lumiel can only agree, her hope finally renewed. But their moment is cut short as the door is smashed open. A squad of royal knights storms the room, surrounding them both. The captain accuses Lumiel of attempted assassination and places her under arrest. Hiram stands, telling them not to barge into his room uninvited. The knight just orders him to stand down, claiming this is a royal command. Hiram steps forward, telling them to take him to the king instead. The knights are confused by his calm defiance. He stands there, completely unfazed by the circle of swords. His eyes glow with a dark, unrestrained power. and with a furious roar, he orders the knights to stand down. A wave of pure force sends them all flying back. He calmly tells Lumiel to pick up her sword and follow him. She can only offer a nervous, tearful agreement. He explains they're going to Shire's, whose room is likely surrounded. So he makes a new door right through the wall. They land in the rubble as Lumiel calls out her sister's name. But the young princess can only stare in absolute terror as a massive three-headed dragon crashes into the villa. The ancient dragon's eye narrows, its focus absolute. The villa's staff lies defeated amidst the rubble. Hiram praises Yoram for protecting the young princess so well. Yoram confirms that Shire's is completely unharmed inside his barrier. Lumiel rushes to her sister, her voice filled with relief. Shire's confirms that she's all right, calming her older sister down. In fact, she's never felt better, all thanks to Hiram's cure. He smiles, telling her that's the most important thing. The young princess wishes him a good night, her energy spent. He tells Lumiel that the curse is gone and Shire's just needs rest. Lumiel holds her sister close, relieved that she's finally safe. Shire's offers her heartfelt thanks to both Hiram and Yoram for their help. But Yoram senses that something is still bothering his master. Hiram admits he doesn't think the Prime Minister is their only enemy. Yoram is confused, knowing the man wants to put his own grandson on the throne. Hiram explains the assassination attempt was likely a trap to lure Lumiel to the capital. A win-win scenario for the Prime Minister, where Lumiel would be eliminated no matter the outcome. Lumiel can only apologize, realizing she dragged him into her family drama. But Hiram tells her not to worry, suggesting the Prime Minister might be working with the demons. A revelation that leaves both Shire's and Yoram completely stunned. He explains the teleportation and curse magic are both demonic, a technique that shouldn't even exist in this kingdom. He concludes the Prime Minister is allied with a high-ranking demon, a revelation that leaves Lumiel completely horrified. But Hiram just places a reassuring hand on her shoulder. He tells her he's going to confront the Prime Minister himself. He tells her to stay behind and protect her sister. But she refuses, insisting this is her country's fight. So he tells her that before they leave, he has a little preparation to do. He raises a hand, casting a powerful spell. A brilliant light erupts from the royal villa, encasing the young princess in a protective barrier. With Shire safe, he decides it's time to meet the Prime Minister. He asks Yoram for a ride, and the dragon happily agrees. Returning to his massive form, thrilled to carry his new master, they take to the skies, leaving the ruined estate behind them. Hiram and Lumiel ride on the ancient beast's back. Their destination is the royal palace shining in the night, and they fly straight for the heart of the capital. Yoram soars through the night sky, a shadow over the capital. Atop the ancient beast, Lumiel kneels, her resolve hardening. Her eyes are filled with a fierce, unwavering determination. Hiram's hands tighten around the hilt of his sword. He stands ready, his gaze fixed on the city below. He asks where to find their target, and Lumiel points the way. She explains her uncle is hosting a party for the kingdom's elite. Hiram declares he'll ignore all consequences and confront the Prime Minister directly. But Lumiel refuses to stay behind, insisting she will go with him. He just smiles, accepting her unwavering resolve. He compliments her determined expression, much to the princess's complete surprise. He takes a firm step off the dragon's back, and with Lumiel in his arms, he leaps into the night. They plummet towards the royal palace below. Lumiel holds on tight, bracing for the landing, but Hiram just smiles, completely in his element. Their target is the grand hall where the party is being held. Inside, the kingdom's elite gather for the celebration, and the royal knights stand guard, unaware of the chaos to come. They land gracefully on the palace grounds, ready to crash the party. A small magic circle cushions his landing, a subtle show of force. The royal guards are completely stunned by their sudden arrival. A group of nobles and knights turns to face the intruders, and Hiram and Lumiel stand before them, completely outnumbered. A guard immediately demands to know who these suspicious people are. Hiram just smiles, but Lumiel steps forward to handle the introductions. She announces her name and rank, here on urgent business. But the guards grab her, insisting she can't enter without an invitation, a move that is immediately stopped by Hiram's firm grip. Hiram shoves the guards aside, declaring he doesn't need their permission. The commotion draws the attention of the entire party. The elven nobles look on with disdain and surprise. The guests can only stare, confused by the sudden intrusion. The royal guards quickly surround the pair, creating a tense standoff. A voice calls down from the grand staircase, chiding them for their rudeness. A long-haired elf addresses Lumiel, his expression calm but condescending. Lumiel declares they're not here to celebrate, but to see the Prime Minister. The man's expression shifts, realizing he's finally face-to-face with Hiram. Hiram just smirks, telling the man to try and kill him if he dares. The Prime Minister tells Hiram to calm down, claiming he has no intention of killing him. He punctuates his words with a sharp tap of his staff. The entire court watches as the tense standoff continues. He offers Hiram a place at his side, away from the princess. But Hiram just scoffs, saying he doesn't need the man's protection. He cuts straight to the chase, accusing him of poisoning Princess Shires. The Prime Minister's calm facade finally cracks, if only for a moment. Hiram then reveals the man's alliance with a high-ranking demon. The minister demands proof, dismissing the claim as baseless slander. But Hiram just takes a step forward, ready to lay out the facts. He explains the man is nothing but a pawn to his demonic allies. The Prime Minister can only roar in enraged confusion, but Hiram's hand crackles with power, telling him he doesn't need to understand. After all, if the minister dies, his demon masters will surely come looking. The Prime Minister's face darkens with pure, unadulterated rage, and with a single word, he orders his mages to attack. Hiram just looks up as a volley of spells rains down upon him. A massive explosion engulfs the grand hall in a blinding flash. The force of the blast sends the party guests flying. The Prime Minister and his knights look on, confident in their victory. The Prime Minister scoffs, calling him a worthless commoner. But as the smoke clears, Hiram's hand emerges, revealing he's completely unfazed by the attack. The minister can only stare, his mage's power utterly useless. Hiram just smirks, his patience finally at its end. He declares that by siding with demons to kill him, the Prime Minister has given him a reason to act. He unleashes a wave of dark projectiles, sending the knights flying. He explains that since the man's ambition has failed, there's no reason for any of them to live. A dark projectile strikes the Prime Minister's face. He falls, revealing he knows Lumiel was ordered to kill Hiram. He desperately grabs at her leg, his composure completely gone. He screams for his remaining guards to kill the boy immediately. But the other nobles can only stare, frozen in shock. Hiram pins the man to the ground, telling him death won't be that easy. He grins, explaining that begging will only prolong the inevitable. The Prime Minister can only glare up in a mix of terror and rage. He clutches a magical ring, pleading for his master to save him. But the artifact shatters, his desperate call going unanswered. But Hiram's attack forces the man's true form to the surface, a move he executes with cold, calculated precision. The Prime Minister's body begins to twist and contort as a monstrous hand slams into the palace floor. His elven disguise melts away, revealing a shocked demon underneath. The transformation is violent and uncontrolled, leaving Lumiel and the entire court completely horrified. The demon can only scream in agony as massive, leathery wings tear from his back. Hiram just looks on, calling the demon's methods tasteless. The demon towers over Hiram, its true form finally revealed. It lashes out with a thorny tail, a blur of motion. It relishes its demonic body, feeling more powerful than ever. But Hiram just scoffs, calling its new form an embarrassment to demons everywhere. The demon ignores the insult, thanking a mysterious master named Olan. Its eyes burn with a furious borrowed power. The elven nobles can only watch in absolute terror. It orders the elves to pledge their loyalty to the new demon king. They demand to know why he would betray his own kingdom. The demon declares this is revenge for their prejudice against his human blood. Lumiel demands to know why he would target her and her sister. The demon reveals his master, Olan, ordered her death. He admits to the repeated attempts, all to earn his master's favor. Hiram asks if she's heard enough, and she quietly confirms she has. The demon laughs, boasting that he could now crush an ancient dragon. Hiram just looks bored, telling the monster it should just die then. He scoffs at the demon for speaking of ancient dragons so lightly. And right on cue, Yoram appears, telling the demon to be silent. The ancient dragon's massive fist slams down with incredible force, shattering the palace floor and a nearby tower in the process. The force of the blow sends debris flying through the grand hall, but the demon rises from the rubble, completely unfazed. He tells the elves to witness his true, terrifying power. Perched atop a ruined tower, he threatens to burn the entire city, offering their lives as a sacrifice to the new demon king. The elven nobles can only stare in absolute horror. But a new voice cuts in, a powerful demon who rejects the offering. Hiram looks down from a spire, facing this new, more powerful threat. He just smirks, completely unfazed by the turn of events. The first demon can only scream in rage at Hiram's defiance. The new demon, Olan, gathers a massive sphere of dark energy, an attack that hurtles straight towards Hiram. But the first demon is suddenly caught in its path. As Hiram's hand crackles with a familiar energy, he effortlessly redirects the massive spell, pushing it back with a single outstretched hand. The first demon is completely annihilated by his own master's power. Olan stands tall, having just disposed of his own pawn. but he suddenly coughs up blood, his body racked with pain. He can only stare in disbelief, wondering what just happened. Hiram floats in the air, reintroducing himself as the one true Demon King. He tells Olgan it should be an honor to die by his hand. He gathers a ball of crackling energy as the enraged demon charges forward to meet him, but Hiram is faster, slamming his fist into the demon's face. The blow sends Olgan flying straight through a nearby tower, leaving a gaping hole in the ancient stonework. Hiram's fist still crackles with immense power. Olgan can only look up from the rubble as a massive sphere of light forms in the sky above. Olgan can only raise a hand in a futile attempt to defend himself. But Hiram just looks down, completely unimpressed, as Yoram unleashes a torrent of pure, destructive energy, a sight that brings a wicked grin to Hiram's face. The demon can only stare in absolute disbelief, his body racked with pain from the devastating blow. He stumbles, completely disoriented by the sudden attack. Questioning how a lesser being could ever harm him, his body is sent flying back into the palace wall, and he crashes to the ground, defeated before the elven court. Olgan coughs up blood, admitting this is the end for him. But the elven nobles turn their anger on Lumiel, calling her a traitor. Olgan just laughs, reminding them they're all complicit in his plans, a revelation that leaves the entire court completely stunned. But Hiram and Lumiel just watch, unfazed by the political drama. The demon boasts that his master's army will soon arrive, declaring that either way, their kingdom is doomed. He lets out a final maniacal laugh, his threat hanging in the air. The palace lies in ruins, a testament to the battle's ferocity, and the elven court can only stare at the devastation in horror. A guard rushes in, reporting a massive magic circle to the northeast. Hiram and Lumiel immediately spring into action, running towards the source of the new threat. They stop, their expressions hardening at the sight. A massive fortress now floats above the capital, just as the demon warned. The elven nobles panic, debating whether to run or surrender. But Hiram just grins, telling them he'll protect the city. He tells them to wait there and walks off alone, leaving the entire court completely stunned by his confidence. Lumiel just smiles, asking if they've all witnessed his true power. She declares with absolute certainty that Hiram will not lose. The elven court can only watch, their fate in a human's hands. Hiram just grins, calling for his ride to come on down. He stands alone against the massive floating fortress, and right on cue, Yoram lands on a nearby tower, shattering the ancient stonework with his immense weight. The nobles can only stare up in absolute terror. As the ancient dragon's eye locks onto them, he lets out a mighty roar, a warning to all who would threaten the city. A memory flashes of him asking Ilmgart for a ride to face an army. Yoram lets out a roar, confirming he understands the plan. Hiram tells his ally it's time to move out. They soar through the sky, heading for the northeast, flying towards the source of the massive magic circle. The ancient dragon cuts through the air with incredible speed, and they arrive to find a full-blown demonic invasion underway. A horde of monsters pours from the fortress, ready for war, but a single blade suddenly falls from the sky above. Hiram explains these are all Olgan's disposable, magically altered pawns. Yoram asks if he should just incinerate the entire army, but Hiram just tells him to go ahead. Yoram eagerly accepts the command, his maw glowing with power. He unleashes a torrent of pure, destructive fire. The monstrous army is instantly engulfed in the inferno. The flames sweep across the battlefield, carving a path of absolute destruction through the horde. The ancient dragon's fury is a sight to behold, as he incinerates the entire army in a single devastating pass. Lumiel is stunned by the display, as Hiram calls it a living disaster, but our boy's focus remains fixed on the fortress ahead. But Hiram's gaze remains fixed on the fortress. He watches as a new wave of monsters is unleashed, and from the darkness, a new figure emerges, a powerful demon who seems to be in charge of this whole operation. Yoram's eye narrows, not taking this new threat lightly. He unleashes another torrent of destructive energy, but the attack is stopped by a massive magical barrier. The demon stands behind it, completely untouched by the blast. He just smirks, calling their efforts pathetic and weak. And from behind him, a new, more powerful beast emerges. Hiram tells Yoram that he'll handle this new opponent personally. The ancient dragon asks if he knows the demon commander. Hiram just smirks, confirming that he most certainly does. It's the same horned demon from before, the one obsessed with Filfi. He tells Yoram to clear the field and Lumiel to handle the stragglers. He walks off alone, leaving his allies to their own battle. He entrusts the fight to Lumiel and Yoram. The princess confidently accepts her new mission. Yoram takes to the skies, ready to support her from above, and Hiram's gaze hardens, ready for this long-awaited confrontation. The horned demon stands atop his monstrous beast, mocking Hiram's new human form. He declares that a weak human is unworthy of his loyalty, but Hiram just smirks, saying he has no interest in the demon's loyalty anyway. He then calls the demon by his name, Olan, a name that leaves the demon completely stunned. The two face off, a former king against a forgotten subordinate. Olgan's composure completely shatters. He demands to know how a human could possibly know his name. Hiram just grins, telling him that he remembers everything. He recalls Olgan's former life as a low-ranking secretary in his old court. Hiram confirms the demon's past with a knowing look. Olgan can only stare, completely lost for words. Hiram clenches his fist, calling it a moment of glory. He explains that a king never forgets his subordinates. The demon can only question the title of Demon King. He lets out a furious roar, refusing to believe it. He demands to know how Hiram dares to act like a ruler now. He explains that Hiram's war with the god cost them everything. The other races they once ruled saw their weakness, and used it as the perfect chance to launch an all-out war. He explains that with their magic weakened, they lost their territories, and were forced to flee, a shadow of their former glory. He blames Hiram for everything they lost, screaming that he is unworthy of the title of Demon King. But Hiram just listens, his expression unreadable. His silence only seems to fuel the demon's rage. He finally speaks, reminding him of the god's demand. A statement that leaves Olgan completely confused. He asks Olgan if he truly seeks the protection of that god, the same one who demanded the sacrifice of their people, a memory of a small, wilting flower. A young Olgan recalls the previous king's reign, when children were sacrificed daily to appease the demon god. Hiram asks if he felt nothing for his own kind, but Olgan calls it a rational sacrifice for the greater good. Hiram's silhouette looms as he speaks of a ruler's duty, declaring that such a betrayal is unforgivable. Olgan just laughs, questioning if Hiram truly intends to kill him. He clutches his head, his composure finally breaking, taunting Hiram that he couldn't even win in his past life. Olgan screams that things are different now, that a mere human could never defeat him, but Hiram just smirks, telling him to come and see for himself. He tells Olgan to enjoy the power of a heavenly king with his new body. The massive beast unleashes a torrent of destructive energy. Hiram stands alone, facing the overwhelming attack head-on. The blast sweeps across the battlefield, a wave of pure destruction, but he raises a hand, erecting a massive magical shield. His expression is calm, completely unimpressed by the display. Two massive beasts charge in, ready to crush him between them. But our boy's gaze remains cold and completely unfazed. He weaves through the monstrous horde, a blur of motion. His attacks are swift and brutal, striking down one beast after another. He moves like a whirlwind of controlled fury. He stands alone against an entire army, unleashing a torrent of magic and steel. He seems almost impressed by their numbers, his expression hardening with resolve. Olgan just watches from above, mocking his former king, but Hiram just unleashes another wave of magical attacks. His hand crackles with power as he prepares a counter. A massive explosion of light erupts from the ground, sending the demonic beast flying back in pieces. Hiram just smirks, calling it a decent attack. He now stands before Olgan's massive, multi-headed beast, and he looks about as worried as a lion in a petting zoo. But then his expression shifts, noticing something new. The beast's many heads begin to glow with a sinister light. Olgan screams as it unleashes a combined blast of pure energy, a torrent of destruction that carves through the battlefield. The skeletal heads of the beast let out a silent roar. Its massive claws dig into the scarred earth. The creature stands firm, a monument to demonic power. But Olgan just watches, his expression cold and confident. Hiram's eye narrows, his focus absolute. He asks if the demon is finished with his attack, because now, he declares, it's finally his turn. A dark, crackling energy gathers in his hands. Olgan can only scream, enraged that a mere human would dare. His face is a mask of pure, unadulterated fury. A wicked grin spreads across Hiram's face. He unleashes a single, concentrated blast of power. His expression is one of pure, unadulterated joy. He's clearly enjoying this far too much. The attack slams into the beast's defense, shattering the magical barrier with ease. The shield crumbles into a million pieces. Olgan can only stare in absolute disbelief. His confidence is completely shattered, as his monstrous beast is sent flying back into the earth. Yoram can only look on, impressed by his master's power. Elsewhere, Lumiel carves a path through the remaining horde. Her expression is one of pure, unwavering focus. But she looks up, calling out Hiram's name in concern. She wonders if he's managed to survive the battle. The battlefield is left scarred, the beast completely annihilated. But Olgan rises from the rubble, refusing to accept defeat. He declares he is the head of the new Demon King's 4 heavenly kings. screaming his name with a newfound arrogant pride. But Hiram just smirks, telling him his skills are as pathetic as ever. He looks down, calling the entire display a disappointment, declaring that after all this time, Olan is simply too weak. He roars that a true demon should reclaim what they've lost with their own power, not by clinging to a god. The defeated demon can only lie in the rubble. As Hiram asks if his words are falling on deaf ears, he decides to offer one final mercy to his former subordinate, a quick and painless death. But Olan just smirks, reminding Hiram that he had a daughter, a question that has Hiram demanding to know if he means Filfi. The demon confirms it, offering to summon her to this very battlefield, a threat that brings a cold, silent fury to Hiram's eyes. Hiram's voice is cold as he tells the demon to go ahead and try. Olan just smirks, clutching his chest in a mock gesture of obedience. He agrees, promising to fulfill his former king's final command. He pulls out a strange, glowing locket, a tool for his dark spell. Raising it to the sky, he unleashes a massive summoning circle. The portal expands, casting an ominous light over the battlefield. From its depths, strange, dark figures begin to emerge. Hiram looks up, his confidence wavering for the first time. He recognizes the immense, terrifying power emanating from the portal. A horrifying realization dawns on him. This is the magic of the demon god. A pillar of divine energy erupts from the ground. Hiram can only stare, demanding to know what's happening. Olan just laughs, confirming he's summoned Filfi. But from the light, a skeletal face emerges. A massive crowned lich towers over the battlefield. Its immense power radiates across the scarred land. The undead king looks down with empty, hollow eyes. Hiram can only look up, his mind reeling in disbelief. But the pendant he carries begins to glow brightly, confirming the impossible. This monster is indeed Filfi. His hand clenches around the pendant, a silent, furious grip. The pearl glows, a painful confirmation of the truth. Olan explains that he's used his own magic to improve her. Hiram can only look down, his heart filled with a cold rage. The demon boasts that he's made her a vessel for the demon god itself, turning his daughter into the ultimate weapon. A furious roar tears from Hiram's throat, his eyes burning with pure, unrestrained hatred. Suddenly, a wave of dark energy erupts from the ground, an attack that even seems to catch Olan by surprise. The blast sends Lumiel flying through the air. Olan recognizes the immense power of a true demon king. But it's not coming from the lich, it's coming from Hiram. His eyes burn with a cold, unforgiving fury. He moves in a flash, closing the distance in an instant, and delivers a single, devastating blow to the demon's face. But the undead Filfi finally makes her move, launching a whip-like attack straight at him. Hiram catches the attack, his expression unreadable. He looks down, his focus now entirely on his daughter. He holds the defeated demon by the throat, a king passing judgment. Olan can only cough up blood, his body completely broken. But Hiram's cold expression shows no hint of mercy. He demands to know if there's any way to turn Filfi back. The demon just smirks, admitting it would be nearly impossible. Hiram's grip tightens, his patience finally at its end. He changes his line of questioning, asking where the demon god is hiding. Olan reveals the god is still healing from its battle with Hiram 5 centuries ago, but he refuses to reveal the location of its cocoon, even under threat of death. Hiram just looks down, calmly processing the demon's final act of defiance. Hiram roars that if the demon won't talk, he should just die. But Olan just smirks, questioning who's really about to die. He laughs, declaring that Hiram is the one who will meet his end. He reveals this isn't just Filfi, it's an avatar of the demon god, and he orders the monstrous lich to kill the former demon king. The undead creature crackles with a divine, terrifying power. Hiram wonders if Olan is controlling it through some kind of contract. The demon screams his command, pouring his magic into the locket. But the avatar's head suddenly explodes in a flash of light. A turn of events that leaves both Hiram and Olan completely stunned. Hiram orders the avatar to stop, but it's too late. The divine power within it goes completely haywire. The blast sends Olan flying, his body disintegrating, leaving nothing but a memory of his failed ambition. The avatar's power now lashes out uncontrollably. Hiram realizes this raw, untamed energy is a major threat. He knows if it reaches the capital, the city is doomed. So he erects a series of powerful magical barriers. He can sense Filfi's magic mixed with the god's power, and decides to try and separate the two energies. He focuses on the core of the unstable energy. The avatar crackles with the god's untamed power. He realizes the two magics are fused, impossible to separate. A memory flashes of a young Filfi calling his name. He remembers the gentle smile he once wore, a moment of peace from a life long past. He recalls praising her for her studies, a simple fatherly gesture of affection. Back in the present, his hand reaches out, a new plan forming. He stands over his daughter's monstrous form, his resolve set. He looks down, his voice filled with sorrow for what she's become. The undead creature can only let out a pained, guttural cry. It thrashes wildly, its divine power lashing out at him. He demands to know if it's Filfi speaking or the demon god. But the only answer is a furious, silent roar. The avatar's body begins to erupt with unstable energy, a blinding flash of pure, untamed power. The blast sends Hiram flying back through the air, leaving behind a churning sea of raw, chaotic magic. From the chaos, a new form emerges, and Hiram stands ready to face it. He can only call out her name, his voice filled with anguish. From the raw energy, monstrous skeletal figures begin to form. They surround him, a horde born from his daughter's corrupted power. He stands alone against a tidal wave of chaotic magic. A massive dragon of pure energy unleashes a furious roar, but it stands before him, addressing him as its king. It explains that it overheard his entire struggle, and that even if this monster was once his daughter, he must now destroy her. It warns that if Hiram hesitates, it will burn the entire continent to stop the threat. But Hiram refuses, declaring he will save Filfi and protect Shires and the city as well. He declares that he will save Filfi, no matter the cost. He tells Yoram to attack the avatars with everything he has. He'll find a way to save her and protect the city at the same time. Yoram reluctantly agrees to the dangerous plan. The ancient dragon unleashes a torrent of destructive fire. The skeletal horde is instantly incinerated by the blast. But the monsters begin to regenerate from the very ashes. Hiram realizes these are avatars of the demon god itself, so Yoram prepares to burn them all over again. But Hiram calls out, stopping his ally in his tracks. The skeletal beast is engulfed in a blinding flash of light. Hiram realizes that Yoram's attacks are only fueling their regeneration. The little dragon can only watch as the monsters reform from the ashes. No matter how many he crushes, they just keep coming back. Yoram lets out a frustrated roar, surrounded by the endless horde. So Hiram casts a new spell, a binding light that wraps around his own ally, much to Yoram's complete confusion. He raises a hand, drawing the dragon's immense power into himself, and unleashes it in a controlled, devastating wave. He declares he won't let these monsters devour that power for themselves. He weaves through the skeletal horde, a blur of motion, unleashing the dragon's power in a sweeping arc of destruction. But he knows his new human body is still not fully accustomed to his magic, and it's frustrating that he can't use his full power as he once did. But he refuses to give up on protecting the city, defeating the avatars, and saving Filfi. So he taps into his old power, demonic wings sprouting from his back. But a familiar voice suddenly cries out his name, a sound that cuts through the chaos and catches him completely off guard. He turns to see Lumiel, fighting her way through the monstrous horde. And now the two of them stand together against the endless tide. She charges through the chaotic battlefield, her steps firm. Calling out his name, she makes a bold declaration. She tells him to leave the smaller monsters to her. He questions if she can handle it, but she accepts the task with confidence. As he watches her fight, he notices something strange. The monsters she cuts down aren't regenerating. He realizes it must be the divine protection of a hero at work. He warns her not to be reckless, and she promises to be careful. With the horde handled, Yoram lands, offering his master a ride. Hiram's gaze hardens, his focus now on the true enemy. Lumiel looks on, her expression filled with concern. Hiram calls out to her as she turns to face the horde. She explains that she understands his need to save Filfi, and declares her absolute faith that he will succeed. Her words seem to catch Hiram completely by surprise, but a genuine smile spreads across his face. He thanks her, entrusting the smaller threats to her care, an order she accepts with unwavering resolve. And with that, she charges into the fray, facing down the remaining monsters. She gathers her focus, ready to unleash her own power. She stands her ground against the skeletal avatars, her resolve firm. The princess prepares to face the entire monstrous horde alone. She carves a path through them, a whirlwind of steel and fury. But for everyone she cuts down, more seem to take its place. She declares that she is their opponent now, drawing their full attention. Her eyes burn with a fierce, unwavering determination. But she's not fighting entirely on her own. As Yoram soars through the sky, ready to provide backup, he prepares to show them the true power of the scorching flame dragon, and unleashes a massive torrent of destructive fire upon the horde. The dragon's fire slams into an invisible divine barrier, but the skeletal avatar is completely unfazed by the inferno. Yoram realizes this is the power of a god, its defense far too strong. But Hiram tells him to keep attacking, to pour on the pressure, so the ancient dragon prepares to unleash another volley. Meanwhile, Hiram faces down the massive avatar himself, his demonic power now fully unleashed. He strikes with a wave of pure, dark energy, sending the monstrous creature crumbling to the ground. But in the sky above, a new threat begins to form. A massive explosion rocks the battlefield, as the skeletal avatar is torn apart by the blast. It lets out a silent, furious roar of defiance. But the monster simply reforms, rising from the rubble once more. Hiram dives in, ready to continue the assault. He and Yoram unleash a combined attack on the massive beast. But Hiram realizes that even this much power isn't enough. The avatar simply regenerates from every blow they land. But he knows the demon god isn't truly immortal. He apologizes to Filfi, asking her to hold on just a little longer. He promises to save her, his demonic power fully unleashed. As Yoram watches from above, the battle rages on. A memory flashes of a time long since past. Back in his old fortress, a place of power and shadow, he recalls a quiet moment, playing a game of kings. A rare moment of peace for the legendary demon king. He was a ruler, but also a father. He calls out a familiar, cherished name, Filfi, and the young demon girl appears, asking if he called for her. He tells her he has a special gift, a warm smile on his face. He holds up the pendant, a familiar silver charm. She asks if he made the necklace himself, admitting that it looks pretty cool. Hiram just watches her with a fond expression. He explains it's not just for looks. It's a protective charm that will always connect them. A gift that she accepts with a heartfelt thank you. A memory that now fuels his desperate fight. He knows he has to save the girl he once protected. And so he unleashes his full power against the avatar. He unleashes his full demonic power, a blur of motion against the massive avatar. His focus is absolute, his movement swift and deadly. He carves through its defenses with a blade of pure darkness. The avatar roars, its core glowing with unstable energy. But Hiram's assault sends it reeling back across the battlefield. He looks at his hand, realizing his human body is struggling to contain this much power. Yoram calls out to his king, seeing the strain the fight is taking. But the avatar begins to regenerate, its divine energy flaring. It reforms from the very light of their attacks, a sight that only fuels Yoram's fiery rage. The ancient dragon soars through the chaotic battlefield, unleashing another powerful attack against the massive avatar. But the creature simply reforms from the raw divine energy. Hiram watches as its hand regenerates in an instant. He realizes this is going to be a very long fight. Elsewhere, Lumiel finds something strange about her own battle. She carves a path through the endless horde of minions, her body feeling light, her movements faster than ever before. Even these lesser monsters are incredibly strong, but she cuts them down with a newfound, effortless grace. She moves with a speed she's never known, realizing she's become far stronger than before. And she knows it's all thanks to Hiram's training. She thinks of her sister, Shires, finally safe and happy. And she remembers Hiram's story about his own daughter, how he just wanted to see Filfi one more time. If that is his one true wish, then she will help him. But the fight is still taking a heavy toll on her body. She wants to save Filfi too, but feels so powerless. What can she possibly do against such an overwhelming foe? But then, she spots a glowing core in the monster's chest. A brilliant flash of light confirms her suspicion. She realizes that must be its one true weak point. And without a moment's hesitation, she charges forward, leaping straight towards one of the skeletal beasts. A move that leaves even Yoram completely stunned. She lands hard, shattering the ground beneath her, kicking a piece of rubble into the air, using it as a stepping stone to launch herself higher. She soars through the air, ready to strike a decisive blow. Hiram calls out, warning her that a sword won't work, but she ignores him, her blade aimed true. She lets out a fierce cry as her blade pierces the glowing core, sending a spray of dark energy across the battlefield. The avatar lets out a silent, agonized scream, a sight that leaves Yoram completely speechless. Even Hiram can only stare in disbelief. The undead creature is actually bleeding, and for the first time, the monster doesn't regenerate. Hiram realizes her attack was different from all the others, and for the first time, the monster lets out a pained cry, a sound that leaves Hiram completely stunned. He recognizes that voice, his eyes wide with disbelief. He calls out her name, asking if it's truly Filfi. The creature seems to respond, its hollow eyes fixed on him, and in that moment, he understands the impossible truth. Lumiel calls out to him from across the battlefield, telling him to look at the wound she just made. He sees the gash in its chest, the first real damage they've inflicted. He realizes the glowing core is the very pendant he gave her. He leaps forward, apologizing for what she's endured, blaming his own weakness for her terrible fate. But the monster just laughs, a voice that is not her own. Hiram screams, telling her he's sorry for the wait. And through the chaos, a broken voice pleads for him to end it. But he refuses, promising he'll find a way to save her. The voice can only repeat its desperate, pained request. He tells her to hold on, that he's coming for her now. But the avatar prepares to unleash another devastating attack. He screams her name, his voice filled with anguish. But the avatar just unleashes another torrent of raw power. A massive explosion tears through the already scarred land. He realizes the demon god's consciousness is suppressing Filfi's, but he's found a breakthrough, a way to use Lumiel's hero power to create an opening. He lands beside her on the battlefield, a new plan in mind. He calls out to Lumiel, asking her to lend him her strength. She agrees without a moment's hesitation, ready to help. He tells her to stay close and focus only on attacking the avatar, and with her resolve firm, she follows him into the heart of the storm. The massive avatar looms over them, its power crackling. It unleashes a wave of pure destructive energy, but Hiram erects a shield, protecting them both from the blast. He retaliates with a volley of his own magical attacks. The avatar counters with a massive beam of divine power, a torrent of energy that Hiram meets with a multi-layered barrier. He stands firm, his focus absolute as he holds back the tide. Just then, Yoram swoops in to provide some much-needed backup, declaring that he'll handle the threats from above. He intercepts a smaller beast, blasting it from the sky. Hiram calls out to Lumiel, telling her that now is the time. She responds with a determined cry, ready for his command. He prepares to launch her straight at the massive avatar, and with a powerful throw, he sends her flying into the air. She soars through the sky, a living projectile aimed at the beast. Her eyes burn with a fierce, unwavering resolve. She lets out a final battle cry, her body crackling with power. Her blade is aimed true, ready to strike the massive beast. She closes in on the avatar's skull, ready to land the blow. And Hiram can only watch, his entire plan now in motion. Her eyes burn with a fierce, unwavering resolve. She flies straight towards the massive avatar. As Hiram provides support from the ground, he casts a spell to guide her path. Telling her not to worry and to just go, Lumiel lands hard, ready for the final push. She lets out a final, determined battle cry. Her blade meets the avatar's divine power head-on. She calls out to Filfi, telling her to just hold on. And with a final push, her sword strikes true. A brilliant arc of light cuts through the air as Lumiel strikes. Her blade slams into the avatar's skull, a direct and powerful hit. Hiram calls out her name, praising her for a job well done. He lands beside the dissolving creature, his work not yet finished. He retrieves the pendant, noting that without the god's power, the curse is nothing. He then unleashes a massive wave of purifying energy. The light expands, sweeping across the entire battlefield. The remaining monsters let out a final, silent scream. Hiram calls out to Filfi, telling her to hold on just a little longer. He focuses his power on the glowing core, ready to finally break the spell. But Yoram roars, refusing to let the attack connect, unleashing a massive wave of fire to shield his master. Hiram thanks his ally for the much-needed assist. He gathers the residual energy, ready to turn it back on his foe, but his expression suddenly shifts to one of pure shock, as a dark, unfamiliar power surges through his body, an energy he unleashes in a single devastating blast. But the attack triggers a strange new sensation within him. He realizes he's now connected to the demon god's own spirit, and admits that even weakened, the god's magic is still impressive. The demon god's voice echoes, vowing to find and destroy him. But Hiram just crushes the pendant, declaring he'll end this now. The cursed artifact shatters into a million pieces. He declares that this is finally the end, unleashing all the stored energy in a single devastating blast, engulfing the avatar in a massive pillar of light. The attack tears through the heavens, a beacon of pure destruction. Lumiel and Yoram can only watch, wondering if it's finally over. The avatar's form dissolves into dust and light, and Hiram looks on, a quiet, victorious smile on his face. The divine energy finally dissipates, leaving only silence in its wake. Lumiel cheers from Yoram's back, celebrating their hard-won victory. Hiram lands gently on the scarred battlefield. Holding the small, restored form of his daughter in his arms, he calls out her name, Filfi, his voice filled with relief. Her eyes slowly flutter open, looking up at her savior. He offers a gentle smile, apologizing for taking so long to find her. She can only whisper his name through a flood of tears. He holds her close, telling her that everything is finally all right. And after 5 long centuries, she finally lets out all her pain. Even Yoram can't hold back his tears, overjoyed to see her safe. And so the battle ends, with the small group standing victorious amidst the ruins. But this victory triggers a memory of a time long past in the demon lands, a memory of the former demon king holding his daughter close. He was a ruler of immense power, his gaze filled with a cold, unwavering resolve. He spent his days in a vast library searching for knowledge, and his nights on the battlefield protecting his people. He walked the halls of his fortress, a solitary king, a ruler who carried the weight of his entire race on his shoulders. He walked the halls of his fortress, a solitary king. He recalls arriving at Olgan's former lair, only to find a chaotic battle already underway. A young witch floats above the fray, observing the fight, while a powerful demon named Evgeny tears through the monsters. The witch, Carmelo, seems completely unfazed by the violence. She cheerfully explains she's just cleaning up the place, because the dead can't really tidy up after themselves. Evgeny, despite his title as secretary, fights with brutal efficiency. He grumbles that losing to a human would be a disgrace to the four heavenly kings. He holds up a defeated monster, asking Carmelo why Olgan didn't bring it to the fight. The witch just looks down, her expression unreadable. She cheerfully admits that she already knows the answer. Explaining that Olgan thought the beast was too strong to control, Evgeny just ends the creature, his patience clearly worn thin. He then turns to face a much larger masked demon. The new demon declares that Olgan was useless after all, a sentiment that Evgeny seems to agree with. The masked demon raises its massive axe, ready for a new task, as Evgeny draws his own blade, crackling with dark power. The two demons clash in a flurry of steel and fury. Their weapons meet with a resounding impact. The masked demon's gaze is cold and unyielding. Evgeny demands to know the meaning of this interruption. But a new warrior, a royal knight named Franca, steps forward. She's joined by another, who announces the demon king has summoned them all. Suddenly, a strange net-like magic ensnares the area. The masked demon stands before a horde of ravenous beasts. He swings his massive scythe with brutal force, carving a path of destruction through the monstrous army. A massive beam of light tears through the fortress, as Evgeny calmly acknowledges the order he's been given. The attack carves a massive trench through the battlefield, leaving a path of utter devastation in its wake. Evgeny reveals that Olgan had been given a fragment of the demon god's power, and Carmelo admits she knew he was working with the god all along. The masked demon just watches, his expression unreadable. Elsewhere, the new demon king, Ilmgard, laments that her plans were used by a mere human. She sits upon her throne, a picture of cold, regal power. Evgeny then turns his attention back to the witch, Carmelo. He asks if she was close with the traitor Olgan, suggesting that perhaps their relationship involved a plan to overthrow the new demon king. The accusation leaves the young witch completely speechless. The masked demon watches the interrogation in silence. Carmelo falls to her knees, overwhelmed by the situation. She insists she was powerless and knew nothing of Olgan's betrayal. Evgeny steps in, swearing his own absolute loyalty to Ilmgard. The other heavenly kings quickly follow suit, pledging their fealty. Ilmgard looks down, her expression unreadable as she considers their words. The masked demon places a hand over the witch's head, but Ilmgard interrupts, ordering them all to bring her Hiram's head. Her expression is one of cold, absolute command, a command that seems to reach across the continent to Hiram himself. But back in her throne room, Ilmgard calls out a hidden presence. A flaming skull emerges, ordering her to accept its power to kill Hiram. Ilmgard flatly refuses, telling the remnant not to order her around. The avatar rages, questioning how a mere king could defy a god. She answers with a wave of souls, calling its audacity the height of insolence. A wicked smile spreads across her face as she prepares her own attack. She unleashes a single dark projectile, an attack that shatters the god's very essence. The divine remnant is consumed by her power, its form dissolving into nothingness. Ilmgard looks on, her victory absolute. A new demon king has asserted her dominance. Sometime later, back in the Ortville kingdom, a quiet peace has settled over the capital. Hiram enjoys a rare moment of rest, reading on a balcony. A well-earned break after saving the entire kingdom. Yoram admits that for a great war, that was surprisingly tiring. In the aftermath, the king was freed from Olgan's curse. And with his health restored, he began to lead his kingdom down a righteous path once more. So Hiram and his companions decided to stay at the palace until Filfi fully recovered. The young demon girl and the princess seem to be getting along just fine. Lumiel watches them with a gentle smile, offering to help. But Filfi seems a bit wary of the hero's presence. Hiram explains that as a demon, she's naturally on guard around a hero. Yoram recalls how Lumiel's power shattered the demon god's avatar, a truly surprising feat. Hiram adds that it might also be due to the divine protection of the holy god. Yoram notes that the holy god is still a factor, and awakening it could be a huge problem. He says their main concern now is finding the demon god's true location. Hiram agrees, admitting they learned nothing from Olan or Filfi. Yoram asks if the god was sealed away somewhere. Filfi explains that after Hiram's defeat, the one who sealed her was the Dragon King, Jormungandr. Yoram is shocked, wondering if it was a betrayal, but she explains Hiram always sleeps after reincarnating. Hiram calms his ally, explaining Jormungandr likely sealed her away to protect her, a realization that leaves the little dragon visibly relieved. He asks if she remembers anything else, and she recalls waking up about 50 years ago. She explains that 2 unknown people had entered her barrier. She recalls one was a demon, and the other an elven hero. After that, her world went dark, hearing only the demon god's curse. Hiram holds her close, telling her she's finally safe. Yoram asks what he was doing while sealed, and if he's going to die, a question that seems to catch Hiram off guard. But his attention is drawn to a familiar demonic energy. He can't see it, but he knows a magical battle is underway. He tells Yoram to watch over Filfi and the others, and with his daughter safe, he rushes off to investigate, heading straight for the source of the disturbance. He rushes through the forest at incredible speed, landing silently on a branch to observe the scene below. He assesses the situation. 3 demons against a single beastman. A 3-on-1 magical battle is raging in the clearing. The lone beastman mage seems to be entirely on the defensive. But these demons don't look like Olgan's remnants, their attack shattering the beastman's magical shield with ease. He finds their appearance here, right after his battle, far too convenient. So he decides to get a closer look at these new players, and drops right into the middle of the fight, telling them to keep it down. He holds the beastman, asking why they're all fighting. The young mage cries out his name, pleading for help, a request that catches Hiram off guard, asking how they know him. The demons are stunned, confirming that this human is indeed Hiram. He asks if they're remnants of Olgan's forces, but before the beastman can answer, a 3rd demon lunges from the shadows. Hiram dodges the surprise attack, noting their skill at concealment. He realizes these aren't soldiers, they're assassins, and finds himself locked in a 3-on-1 battle. He unleashes a wave of dark, chaotic magic. A confident smirk plays on his lips. The blast tears through the forest clearing. He explains he sacrificed accuracy for raw, overwhelming power, wondering if he was the true target all along. He notes the explosion concealed the assassin's presence, but now their energy has vanished completely. He questions if they've actually fled the battle, realizing it wasn't a retreat, but a new attack from below. But he's already destroyed their escape route, trapping them here with him. He notes their caution and their skill at concealing their magic. These are no mere remnants. They're an elite unit, maybe even the Demon King's own. He has to admit they completely outplayed him. He turns his attention to the beastman, who seems to be in shock. He asks how they know his name and what they were doing here. The young mage pleads with him to save someone named Ilmgard, explaining that the new Demon King was attacked by the demon god and is now gravely injured. But before she can finish her story, her body begins to contort in pain. A strange energy envelops her as Hiram calls out in alarm. He catches her as her body goes limp, realizing she's been silenced by a powerful curse. Back at the palace, Yoram senses the urgency. The ancient dragon takes to the skies, his massive wings beating with incredible speed. He soars over the kingdom, a living transport service, carrying the entire royal carriage in his claws. Forget Uber. This is how you travel in style. Inside, Lumiel clenches her fist, her resolve firm. She tries to communicate with Filfi telepathically, asking if her message managed to get through. Filfi confirms the message got through, but she still seems a bit shy. She admits that something feels a little strange. Lumiel explains she was just trying to focus her magic on her forehead. Hiram notes that the two of them are still a bit awkward around each other. He asks if she's still afraid of the elven princess. He explains that while Lumiel is a hero, she risked everything to save her. He reassures her that she'll get used to it in time, a promise she seems determined to keep. She reaches out a hand ready to try, and tells Lumiel that they should continue their training. Hiram asks the beastman, Cornelia, for a status report. She cheerfully confirms that her preparations are nearly complete. She lays out a map detailing the safest and fastest route to their destination. Hiram thanks her, admitting her help is invaluable. He then asks Yoram if he can see the path ahead. The dragon's eye glows, confirming he has a visual. Hiram instructs him to avoid the marked locations on the map. Back inside, Lumiel's attempts to help Filfi are a bit clumsy, but she eagerly agrees to assist. Hiram watches them, his expression hardening with resolve. And with their course set, the ancient dragon soars through the sky. 3 days earlier in the demon lands, Cornelia explains that Ilmgart was gravely injured fighting the demon god's avatar. In the chaos, a rebellious heavenly king captured her and sent assassins after her loyalists. Hiram cuts to the chase, asking what exactly Ilmgart wants from him. Cornelia admits she'd be grateful if he could handle both the traitor and the rescue, but Yoram erupts in fury, reminding her of what Olgan did to Filfi. She tearfully explains that Ilmgart's true wish is for Hiram to save their people. Revealing the rebel king plans to revive the old ritual of daily sacrifices to the demon god, Hiram's expression hardens, finally understanding Ilmgart's true message. He knows if the sacrifices resume, the god will recover, meaning their interests are now perfectly aligned. Hiram turns to Filfi, asking for her opinion on the matter. He explains that Olgan was Ilmgart's subordinate, and asks if she'd be okay with him helping her. Filfi admits she doesn't feel strongly about Ilmgart, but notes it was her order that led to the possession. Still, seeing Cornelia's desperation makes her want to lend her support. As Yoram and Cornelia continue their heated argument in the background, Filfi stands tall, declaring that she'll leave the final decision to Hiram, her eyes shining with a newfound confidence, a sight that brings a gentle, proud smile to Hiram's face. He pats her on the head, praising her for her maturity. He knows their ultimate goal is the demon god, making this a fight they can't avoid. Filfi explains she can't stand by while people are sacrificed. And so, with Filfi's blessing, the decision is made. Hiram declares they'll head straight for Ilmgart's side. Cornelia is overcome with emotion, her hope renewed. She bows deeply, thanking him for his help. But as they travel, their journey is interrupted. Lumiel points to a massive inferno in the distance. Yoram flies over the smoldering ruins of a town, where the ground is littered with skeletal remains. Hiram asks Cornelia what happened, but she's just as horrified as the others. She points to a banner in the distance, recognizing the insignia. It belongs to Carmelo, one of the new 4 heavenly kings. Hiram realizes the mass sacrifices are fueling the demon god's revival. Just then, another village comes into view on the horizon, but Hiram's expression suddenly turns to one of alarm. He calls out a warning to Yoram. As a massive swarm of dragons descends upon them, Yoram lets out a furious roar, meeting the horde head-on. But in the chaos, the carriage is knocked from his grasp, and it plummets through the sky, a helpless target for the enemy. But from the carriage, a new figure emerges, a massive beastman who unleashes a powerful attack. But Hiram moves to intercept the blow, meeting the new enemy in midair as the carriage falls. He stops the massive blade with a single hand. The beastman questions his power, and Hiram calmly confirms his current human form. But with a simple squeeze, he begins to shatter the weapon. The massive sword crumbles into 1,000,000 pieces. Hiram then gathers a ball of energy in his palm, asking if the beastman can truly see what he's up against. He unleashes a massive blast of energy into the sky, sending one of the attacking dragons down in flames. He then lands a decisive blow on the beastman, complimenting him on dodging the full force of the attack. But his attention is on the carriage, still plummeting to the ground. He gathers his magic, a new plan already in motion, casting a protective barrier around his falling friends. The carriage lands with a gentle, cushioned thud. He rushes over, asking if everyone inside is all right. They confirm they're safe, though maybe a little scrambled. Looks like a rough ride. The carriage lands safely amidst the chaos, but a massive dragon looms over them, ready to strike. Hiram and the others step out, ready for the next phase. But Cornelia recognizes the enemy, asking why he's here. The beastman stands among the dragons, a powerful new threat. She identifies him as Tony Rhodes, Carmelo's strongest mage, a warrior whose gaze burns with a cold, fiery resolve. He unleashes a massive torrent of destructive fire, but Hiram just raises a hand to meet the attack, a wicked grin spreading across his face. Lumiel stands ready, her sword drawn amidst the chaos. The entire group is surrounded by a raging inferno. Yoram tells them all to stand back, declaring he'll handle this. But a hand reaches out, effortlessly controlling the flames. Hiram calmly manipulates the fire, completely unfazed. The battlefield is a swirling vortex of raw power. But the beastman, Tony, stands his ground, unimpressed. Hiram's own energy begins to crackle around him. A wide, confident grin spreads across his face. He tells the beastman that this level of fire is nothing to him. The beastman unleashes a furious storm of fire. He pushes forward with a determined, angry roar, forming a massive beast of pure flame to consume his foe. But Hiram just prepares a counterspell of his own, unleashing a disk of pure energy to meet the inferno. His expression is cold, his focus absolute. He sends out a whip of magic to bind the fiery beast. The two attacks collide in a massive, blinding explosion. A nearby dragon can only look on in complete shock. The other demons are stunned, unable to believe Tony's ultimate attack was just swatted away. Hiram stands his ground as the beastman's power washes over him, but a confident smile plays on his lips, completely unfazed. The beastman, Tony, can only glare back in frustration. He roars for Hiram not to get carried away, and summons another massive beast made of pure flame. He screams, questioning how many times Hiram can withstand his power. He grips his weapon, ready for another all-out assault, but Hiram moves in a flash, meeting the attack head-on. He realizes this battle is far too dangerous for the area, and suggests they move to a more suitable location. He unleashes a single devastating blow, sending the massive beastman flying through the air. He crashes into a distant mountain with incredible force, burying him under a mountain of rubble. Hiram looks on, satisfied with the new battlefield. The others can only watch in awe at his overwhelming power. He then turns his attention to the remaining dragons, explaining they're just pawns for the demon god, an order his allies readily accept. He tells Yoram to provide backup for the girls. He turns with a smile, telling them he'll be back. As the remaining dragons begin their assault, a horde of monstrous beasts descends upon them, but Lumiel stands ready, her resolve unbroken, and Filfi's expression hardens with a newfound confidence. She clenches her fist, ready for her first real battle. Yoram lets out a silent roar, ready to protect them all. The three girls stand united, declaring the enemy shall not pass. Meanwhile, Tony rises from the rubble, ready for round 2, and Hiram walks forward, completely unfazed by the challenge. The beastman asks if he's not worried about the 4 he left behind. Hiram asks if he's referring to Filfi and the others. He calmly explains that they're strong enough to handle it, and that this is just good practice for them. But Tony scoffs at his casual confidence, roaring that the one he should be worried about is himself. He unleashes his full power, summoning 3 massive beasts of pure flame. He sends the fiery creatures charging forward, a tidal wave of raw, destructive power, and unleashes a swirling vortex of fire to consume his foe. But Hiram just looks on with a calm, almost bored expression. The beastman unleashes his full power in a furious charge. His eyes burn with a cold, unwavering resolve. The 2 warriors face off, a storm of fire and stone between them. Tony's attack slams into the ground with incredible force, but Hiram just raises a hand, casually redirecting the earth itself. The beastman lets out a furious roar, refusing to be outmatched. He unleashes a massive pillar of raw, destructive energy. But the effort of the attack seems to be taking its toll. He pants heavily, already pushing his absolute limit. Hiram just watches as the beastman recovers from the blow. He raises a hand, his expression cold and unimpressed. Tony roars in fury, refusing to be beaten by a human. He unleashes another massive beast made of pure flame. A swirling vortex of fire and earth tears through the battlefield. But Hiram just floats there, completely untouched by the chaos. His gaze remains fixed, his resolve absolute. Tony looms over him, telling him to burn with regret. His face is a mask of pure, unadulterated rage. He dives down, screaming about the inferiority of other races. The attack slams down, shattering the very earth beneath him. But a hand emerges from the inferno, signaling he's had enough. Hiram effortlessly pushes back the torrent of flames, a sight that leaves the beastman completely stunned. Hiram's gaze is cold, his patience finally at its end. He unleashes a wave of his own power, sending Tony flying. The blast carves a path of destruction through the mountainside. The beastman can only look on in utter disbelief, leaving behind a barren, lifeless wasteland. As a volley of dark projectiles rains down from the sky, the beastman rises, his body still crackling with power. He can't believe his ultimate magic was so easily defeated. But Hiram just holds a remnant of the flame in his hand, complimenting its quality with a confident smirk. The beastman can only kneel, completely outmatched. Hiram asks him a question, his tone turning serious. But Tony just glares back, his eyes filled with rage. He draws a hidden blade, refusing to surrender, and lunges forward in a final desperate attack. A move that seems to catch Hiram completely by surprise. But Hiram catches the blade, noting the lethal poison it carries. He realizes Tony isn't alone. The assassins have returned. One of them grabs the beastman's wrist, driving the poisoned blade deep into his side. The assassin lets go, leaving the weapon embedded in his flesh. Hiram looks down, telling him a simple scratch won't be enough to kill him. He then asks the dying beastman where to find the demon god. But Tony just glares back, refusing to talk. Hiram asks if he's sure, a new spell forming in his hand, and unleashes it, a final, brutal interrogation. The beastman explains he was only ordered to burn the border villages. Hiram asks what was supposed to happen then, but Tony can only remain silent, his plan in shambles. Hiram's gaze remains cold, his patience clearly gone. He tells the beastman it's too late for silence, asking if he knew they'd be passing through. He deduces the real order was to kill the villagers if he didn't show up. He knows their flight path from the kingdom made this area the most likely route. The attack on the village was just bait to draw his attention. He realizes Carmela was trying to kill two birds with one stone, gather sacrifices and assassinate him. And to do that, she must be working directly with the demon god. But the beastman refuses to reveal the demon god's location, so Hiram unleashes a terrifying wave of dark, spectral magic. Tony can only stare in horror, asking what he's doing. Hiram explains he's just adjusting the curse on the dagger, promising not to kill him. He stands over the defeated warrior, his expression cold. The curse intensifies, tormenting Tony with agonizing visions. Hiram asks one last time where to find the demon god, but the beastman screams that he truly doesn't know. Hiram's expression hardens, his patience completely gone. He moves in a flash, deciding to end this interrogation. Meanwhile, as Hiram's battle rages on, his allies are locked in a desperate fight of their own. Filfi finds herself on the defensive, but Lumiel stands firm, her resolve unbroken. She parries a blow, protecting the others from the assault, and quickly dispatches the attacker with a powerful kick. But a new group of demons arrives, ordering them to halt. Their leader holds a young demon girl hostage, a cowardly move that enrages Lumiel and Cornelia. He taunts them, questioning their hesitation. Lumiel and Cornelia can only glare, their hands tied by the situation. The demon leader screams his demands, trying to force them to surrender. But Filfi steps forward, raising a hand to stop them. The demon turns to the hostage, deciding who to eliminate next. But he's suddenly cut off, confused by a strange turn of events. The hostage looks up with a smile, asking if he's okay now that she's free. A revelation that leaves the demon completely stunned, as his entire squad is suddenly struck down by a flurry of blades. He falls to his knees, wounded and defeated in an instant. He can only stare as his elite soldiers lie broken before him. Filfi comforts the young demon children who were just saved. She asks one of the boys if he's all right now, and tells them it's safe to return to their village. But the children look nervously at the defeated demons. So Filfi turns to the soldiers, telling them not to scare the kids anymore. The children finally relax, offering her their heartfelt thanks. She waves goodbye as they head off, a confident smile on her face. Lumiel and Cornelia can only praise her for her amazing work. Filfi just laughs, saying it was an easy win for her, but her friends quickly tell her not to get too carried away. She plants her foot firmly, standing over the defeated soldiers. The demons can only stare up in complete disbelief. Filfi clears her throat, demanding their full attention. She introduces herself as the daughter of the great demon king Hiram, declaring that she will act as his proxy in this matter, and Yorm promises to annihilate them if they don't comply. Elsewhere, Hiram's own interrogation has come to a brutal end. The beastman, Tony, is left completely broken by the ordeal. Hiram stands over him, declaring he has no more use for this pawn. His expression is grim as he considers the information he just extracted. Just then, a familiar voice calls out his name. He looks up to see Yoram descending from the sky, with Filfi and the others riding safely on his back. The ancient dragon lands with a ground-shaking thud, and Filfi leaps into her father's waiting arms. She asks excitedly if his battle is finally over. He just smiles, confirming that it is. Filfi proudly reports that the enemy soldiers have all surrendered and pledged their loyalty to him. She then points to the defeated commander, presenting him to Hiram. The demon can only stare up in absolute terror. The defeated commander introduces himself as Rustin, a mere staff officer. Hiram looks down, his expression cold and analytical. The young demon is clearly terrified of the former king. He bows his head to the ground, begging Hiram to accept their surrender. Hiram asks if Carmelo ordered the attack on all the nearby towns, which the demon confirms. He then asks just how many towns were on the list. Rustin explains there were 3, but the orders suddenly changed to focus on just 1, a change that Hiram finds deeply suspicious. The demon can only guess it was to conserve their forces, but Hiram knows better, wondering what could have made the ruthless Carmelo so cautious. Hiram reaches out, his magic washing over the defeated beastman. The young demon, Rustin, can only stare in horror at his commander's state. Tony is left completely broken, tears of pain streaming down his face. Rustin demands to know what Hiram has done to him. Hiram explains he used a cursed dagger to seal the beastman's magic. He then turns his attention to the terrified young demon, asking if he knows anything about this particular weapon. Rustin admits it was a gift from Carmelo, entrusted to Tony. Hiram just listens, his expression cold and unreadable. He snaps the cursed artifact in two, telling Rustin to take care of Tony. The young demon can only stare as the broken weapon hits the ground. Hiram orders him to take his new army and protect the nearby town. Rustin tearfully accepts the command, his loyalty now absolute. Hiram tells him he's counting on him, then prepares to depart. He asks Yoram for a ride, and the dragon happily agrees. Yoram lands with a ground-shaking thud, ready to make a statement. His massive form looms over the terrified soldiers. The demons can only look on, their will to fight completely broken. Yoram notes that seeing his true form should discourage any thoughts of rebellion. Hiram just smiles, complimenting his ally on the smart move. And so they take to the skies once more, their journey far from over. Elsewhere, a metaphorical game of kings comes to a decisive end. A voice notes that Tony has indeed failed in his mission. The speaker is Evgeny, who seems to have been watching from afar. He dismisses the loss with a casual, unconcerned expression. After all, this small failure won't affect the larger plan. With that, he turns his attention to more pressing matters, his gaze fixed on a source of immense, otherworldly power. He ascends a floating staircase, moving towards his true master, and stands before the ghostly throne of the demon god itself. He declares that if they're coming, then they should come, because the former demon king will be waiting for them. Meanwhile, back in the demon lands, a fortress stands tall. A massive dragon lands on the battlements, its rider surveying the area. The great gates of the fortress part, revealing the path forward. Evgeny stands with a subordinate, watching the skies. The subordinate asks if he was just called, but Evgeny seems distracted. A massive dragon asks if something is the matter. It's suddenly enveloped in a series of powerful magic circles. The beast is impressed, noting the incredible stealth magic of its king. Hiram sits atop the dragon, casually noting that it's finally about time. Cornelia points ahead, announcing they can finally see it. The massive, floating fortress of the Demon King looms on the horizon. Lumiel is amazed by its size, while Hiram and Filfi feel a wave of nostalgia. He turns to Cornelia, asking where they can find Ilmgard. But the beastman seems suddenly flustered and apologetic. She explains Ilmgard is being held in a new temple to the demon god. Filfi asks if the god is actually there, but Cornelia confirms it's just a symbolic building. With their target confirmed, Yoram flies towards the temple on Hiram's command. Cornelia notes the temple is heavily guarded, asking how they should proceed. Hiram tells Yoram to land them a safe distance away from the entrance. The little dragon acknowledges the command, flying them into the fortress. He lands with a ground-shaking thud, returning to his massive form. The group dismounts, ready to begin their infiltration. Hiram casts a spell, telling them to communicate telepathically from now on. The team stands united, ready to face whatever lies ahead, but a lone figure already stands guard at the temple entrance. A powerful-looking demon with long, flowing hair and ornate armor. She looks up as a small, fiery object falls from the sky. Her reptilian eye narrows, sensing a hidden presence. She lunges forward, demanding the intruders reveal themselves. Her subordinates can only watch, confused by her sudden action. She extinguishes the signal fire with a single, decisive strike. Hiram is impressed, noting that she saw through his perfect concealment, and with a flash of light, he and his allies appear. He calmly admits that she's no ordinary soldier. The demon guards are completely stunned by their sudden arrival. Their captain demands to know what business they have at the temple. Hiram just smiles, saying he's here to see someone inside. He tells the captain he's here for Ilmgard, and to simply let him pass. The captain realizes Carmelo's prediction has come true. He summons a small whirlwind, ready to fight if he must. And with a cold gaze, he repeats his demand to be let through. A single wave of force sends the demon guards flying. They're thrown back, completely overwhelmed by his power. He orders them to stay down, his tone absolute, explaining that dealing with them would just be a hassle. But her loyal soldiers struggle back to their feet, ready to fight on, a move that has their captain screaming for them to stand down. She explains she can't let her subordinates die for nothing, declaring that she will stop him here because it's an order. And with that, she lunges forward in a blur of motion. But Hiram just smiles, asking for her name. She introduces herself as Franca, captain of the guard. Hiram returns the favor, revealing his true identity as the god-slaying demon king. He tells her to stake her very life on this battle. Franca can only stare, calling his claim absurd. He calmly tells her it doesn't matter if she believes him. The introductions are over. Her expression hardens, accepting the challenge with a determined glare. He just grins, telling her to come and try her luck. She lunges forward in a blur of motion, her blade aimed true. A spray of darkness marks a successful hit. But as she lands, she finds Hiram standing behind her, seemingly untouched. He admits her speed is impressive, a small cut on his cheek the only proof of her attack. But it's still not nearly enough to truly challenge him. He reveals he tried to catch the blade with his bare hand, as he always does. but he sensed the powerful magic imbued in the weapon just in time, a move that would have cost him his entire hand had he held on. He stands over her, admitting the attack was better than he expected. Franca can only acknowledge the magnificent strike, but Hiram just smiles, impressed that she managed to wound him at all. He casually heals the minor cut, his confidence unshaken. Franca realizes her best attack was barely a scratch. He asks if she's finally convinced of his identity. She admits his strength is indeed abnormal, perhaps even legendary. He offers her a chance to back down, a smirk on his face, but she refuses, declaring she will not retreat no matter who he is. Hiram is pleased by her loyalty, telling her to come at him whenever she's ready. She accepts, declaring that the Godslayer is a worthy opponent. Her eyes narrow with a fierce, unwavering resolve. She unleashes her magic, trapping him in a cage of stone pillars. But the stone cage shatters under the force of their clash. She moves in a flash, her blade a blur of motion, creating a dozen afterimages to overwhelm her opponent. Hiram just smiles, complimenting her impressive speed. But Franca's determination doesn't waver for a second, so he decides to end this with a single decisive blow. The impact shatters her armor and her resolve, sending her crashing into the rubble, completely defeated. The captain lies buried in the rubble, her body broken. Her loyal soldiers can only cry out her name in horror. One of them notes that Hiram didn't even use magic to win. His allies, however, are just impressed by his incredible speed. But a massive slab of stone is suddenly thrown aside, and Franca rises from the debris, battered but not beaten. Hiram looks down, impressed that she's still standing. She asks if he's not even going to use magic on her, questioning if she's not worthy. He just smiles, telling her she'll need more speed and power to make him get serious. But the idea of surrender is something she refuses to even entertain. She declares this is a rare chance to fight a hero of history. She tightens her grip on her weapon and rises from the rubble with renewed determination. Her eyes burn with a fierce, unwavering resolve. She stomps the ground, shattering the earth around her, unleashing a flurry of attacks that crisscross the battlefield. Hiram just smirks, impressed by her increased speed. She moves like a blur, a streak of pure velocity. But our boy just looks on, completely unfazed, as she closes in for another powerful strike. The two warriors clash in a blur of speed and power. He dodges her final assault, shattering the ground with his movement. He looks back with a smirk, declaring that this fight is finally over. But his confidence shatters as he realizes something is wrong. He leaps back, a strange energy now emanating from the ground.